тихонько, рано вранці поводу Маруся, раз, два, три, калина чорнявая дівчина, саду ягоди рвала. Маруся, раз, два, три, калина чорнявая дівчина, саду ягоди рвала. Вийшла дівчинонька, рано вранці воду брать, а за нею козаченько веде коня напувать. Маруся, раз, два, три, калина чорнявая дівчина, саду ягоди рвала. Маруся, раз, два, три, калина чорнявая дівчина, саду ягоди рвала.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар. Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Spring on me shine.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1066 of the news. And of course, today we have very big news that apparently Putin is very desperate to save Russia as he tries to basically worm his way into the negotiating table. Also, North Korea is speeding up troop deployments to Ukraine, and the U.S. is considering sending $330 billion of frozen Russian assets to Ukraine, maybe in the near future. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have been able to hear today that the major Russian company Gazprom, the largest company in the entirety of the Russian Federation, is announced to the public and to the government of the Russian Federation that if the Russian Federation allows for them to set their own prices, Gazprom is imminently going to declare bankruptcy, which will cause a major financial collapse throughout the entirety of the Russian Federation. We have also been able to hear major news that the Russian Federation appears on every channel but President Putin's to be continuing the war, as we've been able to get major information today that multiple different sources throughout the Russian central government are making it incredibly clear that under current prevailing conditions in between the United States and the Russian Federation, the war will go on, and there does not appear to be any serious prospects of peace at this time, as the United States is also considering allowing Ukraine to tap into $330 billion worth of frozen Russian assets to be able to finance the continuation of the war in Ukraine against the Russian Federation well on into the foreseeable future. We have also been able to hear in additional news that Ukrainian strikes have continued to hit around the area of the Morozovsk airfield, as a major fire broke out today, although exact information is somewhat unknown. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear that there has been major news inside the Russian Federation, not only inside of Moscow, but in the area around Ryazan and Bryansk, as additional video and picture evidence has come out showing us the extent of the damage that has been caused within those two cities from the drone attack that occurred last night. We have also been able to hear that a major protest is occurring in Bratislava against the Slovakian government, apparently in support of Ukraine, and also against the sitting government within the area. And we've also been able to hear that there has been more C-17 flights from Germany to Israel and then to Poland, and that is largely confirming our analysis last night that this is most likely the deployment of one of the THAAD batteries from Israel and into Poland instead, possibly a preparation for possible Russian conventional action that may begin here in the future, although that's still unknown at this moment. We have an absolutely major amount of news to cover tonight, but we do have to go out of our way to clarify something that has been stated in mainstream news that is so untrue it is to the level of propaganda-like disinformation. Many people have heard that today the Secretary of State announced the freezing of foreign funding programs from the Department of the Secretary of State, and the only exemptions that were provided according to that was the state of Egypt and the state of Israel. That is markedly untrue if you have been hearing additional information that Ukraine was not marked off or exempted from the funding cut and that they will not be receiving any U.S. support for the next 90 days. That is markedly untrue. We were going to not even address this tonight as we did not know the kind of extent or fallout that had been had from this information, but it is wildly untrue. The Ukrainian state government has already come out several days ago saying that they had been given a pre-exemption to this funding freeze, and we had also gotten clarification through multiple different department heads in the current office of the president's U.S. government that the Ukrainians had been provided a pre-exemption from the funding freeze. The funding freeze is not going to be affecting Ukraine and is not going to be affecting Israel and Egypt. For the large part,
Enforcer, I think where people are getting mixed up on this, and I think this might be where sort of misleading by the mainstream news, is the orders that are coming out are referring to U.S. aid. It's not referring to actual military assistance going to these foreign countries. So that means Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan are still receiving all the military aid that the U.S. was going to give them, but they're not getting the U.S. aid like humanitarian aid that they were getting before. So the military support is still flowing, but there are other things that are being temporarily looked at and investigated, but Ukraine's already received a pre-exemption from that issue. So like it's just really disappointing to see mainstream media putting out something clearly that misunderstood and false. The aid has not been halted in any way to Ukraine, so they're good to go.
That is exactly the case. Funding to Ukraine has not been cut off, and I'm only going to say this one more time because Ukraine aid has not been cut off. The state of Ukraine's government has made it very clear that they have been given a pre-exemption to this. We were able to hear this through multiple different government heads as well. This was all covered on our channel several days ago. So the statements by mainstream news are markedly false, if not untrue, to the point that it may as well be misinformation or some form of propaganda. So that is the best I can give you all on that at the moment. I see many people saying that, well, I actually just saw someone say PBS NewsHour just said otherwise. Well, PBS NewsHour is wrong. Just to put that out there flatly, CNN, Fox, anyone who's reporting that on that right now is markedly wrong. They do not have the information correct. As a matter of fact, I will actually show y'all really quickly on a previous map from last week that we put out here on this channel, the exact proof from the Ukrainian government letting us know that they have been provided an exemption. And that is coming from the mouths of the Ukrainians. I can promise y'all, if the Ukrainians had been cut off from funding, we would know that right now. But this was the statement that we got, and I want to make sure that it's the one that we have. Let me make sure. One second. Want to make sure. Okay, so I believe we put that over in Washington. Let me go over to Washington really quickly and go check. And let's see. Those were about the sanctions. And here we go. Here is the one about Ukraine being given an exemption. According to Ukrainian sources, this executive order does not apply to Ukrainian aid. The United States will continue supporting their war effort against Russia. And just today, which we're about to be talking about here in just a short moment, the United States is already talking about providing funding through the $330 billion of frozen Russian assets currently within U.S. possession to continue to fund and provide supplies and aid to the Ukrainians throughout the course of the remainder of the war. We want to
also get this Enforcer as well, just to give you all an example of, I believe they're spinning the story in I don't know if they're doing this purposely or by accident, but here was a headline from Twitter. It said, breaking, the State Department has paused all foreign aid and quote unquote appears to apply to funding for military assistance to Ukraine. They don't even know that for a fact according to their own wording right there, but they're still reporting it as an end to all support to Ukraine, which is, it's just so factually incorrect. It's disgusting. And that's really just really sad to report something like that. They even word it like they don't know what they're talking about, which clearly they don't. So it's just very disappointing to see.
It is very disappointing to see, and I'm once again, We're trying to make it as clear as possible as we can. We've had all of the news on this for days at this point. As a matter of fact, for about a week at this point, that a pre-exemption had already been provided to Ukraine and that it was not going to be affecting the Ukrainians. And that's why they were not listed in the Secretary of State's announcement for exemptions, because those exemptions are applying to non-military aid. So non-military aid will continue to be provided to Israel and Egypt, but non-military aid will not be provided possibly to Ukraine. Military aid was already given a pre-exemption. So for this reason, that's why it's not listed by the Secretary of State. We're trying to make that as clear as possible again, because I see many people saying that that's just not true, and that is not the case. We have followed this news with a fine-tooth comb. We do this as our living and our job every single day of the week. If that was going to happen, we would know. That is literally the complete opposite of what is actually unfolding right now. And I promise y'all, once again, let's all use common sense and tap the brain cells together here. If the Ukrainians were being cut off from funding, don't y'all think that they would have said something about that today, right now, when that happened earlier on in the morning? Zelensky would already be complaining and whining to the entire world that the Ukrainians have been cut off from funding. So if he's not doing that, they haven't been cut off. So that just lets you know in itself that that's a complete lie, because the Ukrainians would be the first to let everyone know that they weren't getting any more money. So with that, I hope that does address that the best we can and also show the proof from our prior week's map that that is the case. But with that, we do have major news to cover today, and we have a lot of it, as we have been able to hear that Gazprom, the largest company in the entirety of the Russian Federation, is now announcing that if they are unable to fix their own prices or hike up the prices of their fuel and oil products, Gazprom is going to most likely be declaring bankruptcy here within the inevitable future. That major news came out today, and crazily enough, from Russian news sources, as this was actually stated publicly by the Gazprom company today. And according to the information that we have, Gazprom has complained about a lack of money and a lack of capital, and is demanding several times higher gas prices for the Russian Federation to cover its losses after the cessation of exports to Europe, and this just came out today. This is a major change, and this is starting to show us that major companies like Gazprom are beginning to suffer significantly from these significant and major economic losses that have been taken from Ukrainian attacks on oil refineries, and not only that, the new extended sanctions that were extended under the prior president, and now the threats of new sanctions that are already beginning to circle around in the air as of just about a day or two ago under the new president. Things seem to be going very poorly at this point for the Russian Federation, and I once again want to remind y'all that Gazprom is not short work. It's not like a American gas company. This is the Russian equivalent of Amazon. This is the biggest company inside of the Russian Federation. It employs the most people. It produces the most money. This is the actual company headquarters of Gazprom. It's the tallest building in the entirety of the Russian Federation. Crazily enough, the tallest building in Europe as well. This is the power that the company Gazprom has, that they're able to produce a skyscraper like this, that they actually own. And not only that, they are the largest economic engine in the entirety of the Russian Federation. This actually is, as you can see right here, the largest company in Russia. In 2022, the company's revenue amounted to 8 trillion rubles, which is about $500 US. But really quickly, let me actually do the rubles to dollars, so that way we can see the actual amount of money that this company makes. So it is 8 trillion. So let me see here. That is hundreds. So we need to go up a little bit more. Unfortunately, let's see here. One second. I want to make sure that let's see. That's hundreds, thousands, millions, billions, trillion. There we go. So that is exactly $8 trillion right there. So that actually is equivalent. And one second. Unfortunately, we don't have the commas here. So I'm going to try and do this the best I can. Let me make sure that we get to the first zero. So this is equivalent to, let's see, hundreds, thousands, millions. So it's equivalent to about $82 billion annually, roughly, that is being produced inside of the Russian economy. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot. You know, that doesn't sound like too much. There's plenty of companies inside the United States that operate more than $82 billion of profits annually. I mean, that's not a lot, right? But the thing is that the Russian economy is not the U.S. economy. The Russian GDP is hardly the size of the United States. In around 2023 terms, it was approximated to be around $2 trillion. So an $83 billion evaluated company making $83 billion in profit annually, is actually a sizable chunk of the entire Russian GDP. And the fact that this company is actually saying that they have to hike up the prices, and according to what we're hearing, multiple times what the current prices are in Russia to be able to survive, or they're going to go bankrupt. And everyone working for Gazprom right now, all of 466,000 employees as of the 2018 published figure, are going to be unemployed if this company is not able to hike up the prices. This is
Man, you know, the bigger they are, the harder they're going to fall. This thing has a lot of like basically things they have to pay off, like expenses. They have all those employees, they have all these massive buildings. They have a lot of overhead, and that's not hard to that's not actually not easy to keep up with. And if you look right there at their net income right there on that chart you were just looking at, look at that. It says net income 2.25 billion, and their operating income is 8.53 billion, and their overall revenue is 87 billion. So their margins are kind of actually slim when it comes to actually what they're making in profit. So it's a very, very tight industry here with the Russian oil industry and the gas, and it's like really on razor's edge right now. That thing's about to go under.
It really is, but what is more important than this, there's a lot to be analyzed here in the number, but the revenue is $88 billion as of 2020, and we're assuming that number has dropped most likely by tens of billions at this point during this course of the war at this point. And while while Gazprom only makes about $2.25 billion as of 2020 in net income, they are still producing around $88 billion of economic output in the Russian economy, because that money isn't disappearing, it's going somewhere. It's going into the pockets of their employees. It's going into the pockets of the companies that they acquire equipment from, such as drills or other kinds of refined machinery. It goes into everything else: rail transport, air transport, ship transport, building up the infrastructure to transport their oil and fuel products from place to place, oil storage facilities. All of that is a part of this revenue cost. Not only that, all of these employees, nearly the 500,000 strong workforce that they have for this company, is making wages that are fairly decent from what we understand for the large part, at least on the Russian level, not for an American level. And they go out into the economy, and with those wages, they buy themselves their own goods. If all of these employees are out of the job within about a month or two from now, most likely, we are probably going to see that this will produce the economic collapse of the Russian Federation. Once again, this is the Amazon or the Walmart of the entirety of Russia. This isn't a small company. This thing is huge. And if this company goes under, it's highly likely that the rest of the Russian economy will collapse. And this is leading the Russian Federation to have an incredibly difficult conundrum at this point. They either hike up the prices 200 to 300% on all fuel products, which probably will strangle the Russian economy and bring it to its knees in its own way, or they will let the company go under, which will completely cause the economy to literally implode and turn into a black hole at that point. So either way, they are screwed. And another thing that I want to make sure to point out to many people, and also someone want to point out, it's revenue, not profit. Exactly. But you know something that's crazy is that profit is not, the net income here is not the number that actually matters. You see, that's the amount of money that the oil company makes that they get to bring home. So all of the executives and the shareholders, they all make their little bit of money, and then the Russian government gets their cut too. But what's more important is that, like our channel here, like Matthew's video actually had a budget. Okay, so Matthew's video had about, I think, a $50-$70 budget. So when you put that $50 or $70 out there, yes, we didn't make that in the end as a profit on that video. But you know what's crazy is that the music license that he went and got, that little company made money, and then a whole bunch of other companies made money on the licenses they got. Much like that works for us that way, where yes, we're not making that as profits, but that is made as money for someone else somewhere. That is how this $87 billion of revenue works. And if the company goes under, you know what happens? That $87 billion of money that was circling around the Russian economy just literally poofs. It disappears. That company's not pumping that kind of money into the economy anymore. It's not circulating it around. This giant living organ, pretty much the beating heart of the Russian economy, is not pumping this money through it and into the other sectors of the economy that was keeping the entirety of the Russian Federation alive. So, like, for example, let's take one company that would be affected by Gazprom going under. Let's take a Russian supermarket. Let's go find a Russian supermarket in Moscow where the groceries are cheap. Let's see if we can find one. Let's see here. Any grocery stores? This looks like one. So let's go with this mall here, which has a store called Kari, and it will go with Kari. Why not? So Kari is a store in Moscow. Not that any of these workers live in Moscow, but let's say there's a Kari near them. So these employees like to treat their wife to something nice. This is like a kind of like a beauty store for women. So this worker gets his wages from the company, which is deducted from the company's net revenue, but is a part of that $87 billion that they still produce annually. And this guy takes his wages and he takes his wife to Kari and he gets her some eyelashes, and then he goes and spends the rest of it on vodka. But nevertheless, he still gives that company a little bit of his paycheck, and that keeps that company alive. All 466,000 of these employees are spending their money somewhere, and they're keeping a company out there alive by continuously pumping their money through that company and then working to make more and then continuously spending it. So when this company goes under, $87.7 billion that could have potentially been made by some other company out there in the Russian Federation just disappeared. So this company is no longer moving that kind of money around. These employees don't have living incomes anymore to go and pay these companies with. So all of these big companies, like this one right here, the Kari and the RNO Mall, or the RIO Mall, would not be having as many customers. That means that they're not making as much profits as they used to. And if they start to make far less profits than they used to, that now means that they're running in the red and they're not making enough profit to keep their company running, which means that eventually they have to start laying off employees. Eventually, they have to start closing down stores. And eventually, because they keep firing more people and trying to downsize, at some point, they also are seeing that there's not enough people who are making any more money in the Russian economy to be able to come to their store and buy their goods. So then they have to shut down. Now all of their employees and that company, which was circulating money in its own way through the economy, has now also died, and now all of those people are compounding onto the issue that was originally created by Gazprom collapsing. That is largely, in a sense, what will happen if Gazprom goes under. It's not really the net income amount that this company makes that matters. It's actually the amount of money that they generate in its entirety and then circulates around the Russian economy from this company in some way, shape, or form. That's what truly counts. And all of that will disappear if this company goes under. What's even worse is that if they go with the flip side, which is actually raising the prices, which I'll explain why the Russian government has to do that. The Russian Federation may seem like a free market economy, but it really is not, as the Russian Federation's government has continued in the present day to create price ceilings and price floors. This means that the companies that produce products inside the Russian Federation cannot attach whatever price they want to those goods. The price is fixed by the government. So there is a minimum price that they can put on their goods, and there is a maximum price. It's largely like that for every single product type in the Russian Federation, especially those of a significant variety. Things like bread largely have their price fixed by the government. Things like milk also have their price fixed. Oil is also one of those as well, and fuel products also have a fixed price. So if the Russian Federation is looking at this dilemma where we could see that the financial system of the Russian Federation collapses because Gazprom goes bankrupt, they're going to have to raise the price cap. And according to Gazprom, they would need it risen to somewhere about 200 to 300% what it is right now. If Russia did that, and it goes up 200 to 300%, most Russian citizens are hardly cutting by right now. A lot of them hardly can make it. So with the price of fuel increased, the price of everything is going to increase. In a modern industrial society, which the Russian Federation is, a lot of the base price of a good is attached to the cost of transporting that good from its production point to its distribution point, which is where you buy it. So if the Russian Federation sees that fuel increases 300% in price at the maximum, that means that every single good that is being transported is most likely going to have somewhere around a 100 to 150% increase in its price because it costs 300% more to get that good from point A to point B. I know that isn't a direct translation, and that's because transport doesn't make up 100% of the value of a good, but nevertheless, in general, practically every single item in the Russian Russian Federation would skyrocket in price if the cost of transport, because fuel is incredibly expensive, goes up. It will cause a massive effect. Not only that, but it will cause major issues for Russians traveling as well, because the Russian Federation, much like any other country, also has a lot of people who get to work by driving their automobiles. Not as much as the United States. Also, really, the United States is kind of an outlier with that. But nevertheless, there is a lot of people who would be trying to get on the roads each and every day and use their car to get to work and back. That is also a major issue because if the fuel price goes up 300%, now it's costing them 300% more than it already was to get to work. They might not be able to afford that, especially if their jobs are not incredibly high paying. So a lot of people might be put out of work simply because they can no longer afford to get to work. Not only that, public transportation could also be affected as well for people who do not drive a car to work. Any gas-powered trains. Better yet, most of the Russian energy grid is run on natural gas. So that means that the entire energy grid's cost of running will increase possibly by 300%. That also means that the cost of electricity might rise 300%. That then means that to run a train, and even an electric one, it will cost 300% more, just in the terms of fuel. That means that the rates will be increased. That means that people might not be able to afford the tickets to be able to ride these trains from where they are to their job. So in general, as y'all can see by the way I'm trying to explain this, if the Russian Federation moves either direction and allows Gazprom to declare bankruptcy or hikes up the prices of fuel products by 300%, the Russian economy is most likely going to collapse at this point. It is really at the point of no return.
While everybody's focusing on Gazprom, all the other ones are having problems too. You're just not seeing those in the media quite as much because Rosneft had to recently halt all of their modernization efforts on all their plants around Russia because they are running out of money, and also the cost of everything is rising so fast they can't afford to buy the normal supplies that they need to run their company. So they're all having issues. So if Gazprom went under, I have a feeling that pretty much all the other companies would quickly follow suit behind it, probably collapsing one by one. Which would be an interesting situation. But one thing I wonder, though, would Russia try to nationalize those companies or something if they started failing to that point? Is that something they would do?
Dang, that's a tough one. I don't really think they would, because generally when something like that is happening, it's usually on a smaller part of the economy. I don't really think there would be a way for them to nationalize those companies and then subsidize the losses, because the simple issue is that even if they nationalize them, they would still have to rapidly cut this nationalized Russian oil company down in size a large deal, because they wouldn't be able to finance all of these employees just really doing nothing at that point and generating productivity that wasn't sellable on a global market like it normally would be. So if they had, say, let's just say if they nationalized Gazprom, it has 470,000 employees. They are producing 470,000 employees worth of productivity at this point in terms of their oil products. But if there's still no one to buy those oil products, I don't really think it matters if the Russian government nationalizes them. They'd still have to cut the company down to size pretty quickly and probably lay off about 70% of everyone working there right now, which still largely creates the same economic crisis that we would be seeing if they didn't nationalize it.
Yeah, they seem pretty much screwed at this point because they don't have really too many more people to export their oil to. Because with India and China cutting off their imports of gas, that was a huge one. That was actually probably one of the death nails in the coffin here was those two countries cutting that off. And also with Poland reducing theirs by 80%, that was another death nail as well. I think the only thing really letting Moscow hang on by a thread right now is the fact that some EU countries are still buying natural gas. In fact, some countries are still buying it in bulk. Actually, somehow they're getting it. I don't know if it's through a pipeline or what method it's going through, maybe ships or something. But that's the only thing letting them hold on right now, because where else is accepting Russian gas that you're aware of?
I can't really think of anywhere. And if there is any country that would accept it, those countries are usually so poor themselves, they really can't even afford to buy large amounts of it, or they produce it. Like Iran produces so much oil, they don't even consume all of it that they produce. So they usually just export a lot of their crude oil products. And then North Korea is so poor, there really is no money exchange to be had there. You're really just bartering with them. So if you give them oil, you're not getting money. You're getting manpower to put into the war effort in exchange.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, that's just, I just don't know what they're going to do, man. Like, this is a tricky situation, and with the fact that more like severe sanctions might be about to be put on them here shortly, which would cut them off completely, even from Europe. And also, remember, the U.S. is starting to reopen the exports of natural gas, LNG, from our territory, which will give Europe a viable alternative to replace the Russian gas imports, and that's going to be put into motion really quick, like maybe within a couple of weeks, from what we're hearing. So it could get much, much more ugly than it is right now. In fact, we could be maybe looking at a collapse of the Russian energy companies within a month. Like, that's how really bad this is.
It is looking horrendous right now, and especially with Gazprom coming out and publicly saying that today, and already seeing that there has been casualties in that sector already, such as Lukoil Gas, which went bankrupt and shut down a little while ago, about 4 or 5 months ago. Things are not looking good at all. Things are actually looking very bad at this point inside the Russian Federation, and especially within their most critical sector of the economy, which is the oil and gas industries. And so a lot of people have been asked the question, a lot of people have weighed in their opinions on this. Gazprom, the Russian energy company, demands that prices be raised, or really the price ceilings be raised, by several hundred percentage points as they are quickly going broke, according to their own public statement. And a lot of people are throwing their thoughts on this, and many people are saying that it looks like they're about to go bankrupt imminently at this point. Others are saying that maybe they can last for about another year, and then they're going to go under. Some others are unsure and undecided, and others are saying it just sounds like simple greed, because there's no way that Gazprom could be doing that badly. They're just too big to fail. But Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so it looks like 73% of the audience, the overwhelming majority, said they are about to go bankrupt, while 16% said they can last for maybe one more year, and 4% said it sounds just like Russian corporate greed. And I gotta say, this is not corporate greed by any means. They do not want their companies to collapse, and while they do siphon quite a bit of money, the oligarchs do, from Russian companies, I don't think that's what's going on here right now. I think because of the sanctions and the inability to export the oil, these companies are about to go bankrupt. In my opinion, in my guess, and once again, this is not a hard and fast prediction here. This is just my loose estimate. I think maybe a month to 2 months, we could see at least one major Russian oil company actually go under, like actually declare bankruptcy inside of Russia, which would, in my opinion, cause a cascade of the other companies following suit pretty much shortly after that. Once one goes under, that's pretty much it. Like, it's about to be a bad situation for Russia all the way around, like even worse than it is now. So I'm with the vast majority of the audience. I think it's about to be happening pretty quick. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, with them coming out with a statement like that, and especially saying that the prices have to be increased by 200 to 300%, it's showing that they are about to go bankrupt imminently, because to increase the cost of their products by 200 to 300%, that is telling us that they are taking such massive losses that the price of their product would have to increase 300% nearly for them to be able to most likely break even and just survive. So at this point, it must be the case that they are hemorrhaging money, and they're no longer really able to keep themselves rolling at this point, unless there's some sort of a drastic change or a massive influx of money. And also, I saw a lot of people bringing up something that I did not touch on. Another economic factor here is that a lot of people said, well, Putin just couldn't let Gazprom collapse. He would never allow that to happen. Yeah, you're right. Like, he probably wouldn't if he was in a perfect world. But the problem is that there is no reserve capital to give Gazprom to keep them afloat. The government can't bail them out, because the Russian central bank, which is what the Russian government would have used to bail them out, is already apparently moved towards the, moved, and the Duma stopped them apparently from seizing every single person's bank accounts in the Russian Federation and liquidating them if they had a value greater than 13,000 US dollars. They stopped that a little while ago, and so the Russian central bank has so little money, they were about to start robbing the Russian citizenry so that way they could build up enough cash, so that way they could keep financing all of the major Russian companies and the Russian government, so that way it all didn't collapse. But that bank was stopped. The Russian central bank did not do that. So they do not have any reserve capital right now to work off of, and there's no foreign lenders at this point that are giving the Russians any money. They've been cut off from the SWIFT system because of the sanctions at the very beginning of the war, and not only that, a lot of banks are seeing that the Russian economy is very risky at this point, and also due to sanctions are not able to even deal with them at all or lend to them at all. So with this in mind, there's no one to bail Gazprom out. The government can't do it in Russia. They don't have the money. None of the banks in Russia have the money, and and really every international bank either cannot touch them or does not want to touch them because of how bad the situation is getting. So in a sense, there is no way for Putin to just simply not let Gazprom fail. At this point, it practically will fail if something drastic is not done, and then if Gazprom isn't failing, the entire Russian economy is going to be imploding inwards and failing. So in general, they're screwed. I mean, this isn't even an exaggeration. Either any direction that they try and go in at this point, it's either impossible or it's just not doable, and they're still going to see that there is a collapse of some form, either for the company or for the entire economy.
Also, Enforcer, real quick, go grab a Twitter post. I just retweeted. I just saw this. It's at the top of our Twitter page. Grab that real quick and let's show that to the audience because I want to make a quick point here with this post.
All right, and so here we are. Let me go grab it. There we go.
All right, so the post here is basically telling us that about 6 LNG tankers that were going to be heading to Asia to export U.S. oil to Asia have just redirected their course, and now they're taking the LNG up to Europe because, once again, sort of supporting my theory I had earlier, it looks like those European countries currently buying a ton of Russian LNG. They're about to start buying it from America because America is about to slap those horrid extreme sanctions on Russia to permanently end any European purchase of Russian oil as well, which to me, if that does happen, and it sounds like it's very likely to happen, that would be the start of the end for like a complete collapse, a catastrophic collapse for the Russian economy. And right now, that's the leverage the U.S. has over Russia to try to force them to the table, is that threat. And it looks like with these ships being redirected to Europe from Asia, carrying the LNG from the United States, it looks like that could be in motion right now.
And also to explain how this works, because I'm sure a lot of people are like, what the hell, that sounds stupid. Like, wouldn't they just keep going to Asia? No, actually, the captains on how the oil and gas industry works, at least with maritime shipping, is that they actually will divert ships to go wherever they believe they will be able to sell their products the quickest. So originally, all of these ships were en route to some Southeast Asian country because they believed that it would be easy to sell this liquefied natural gas within Southeastern Europe. Southeastern Asia. But as they were en route and they started to hear that the sanctions were now applying to Russian natural gas and that all of these European countries were having to cut off their supply of Russian natural gas, then the companies in the United States heard that and said, phone up the vessels and tell them to change course to head to Europe to go sell our product there because it's most likely going to be sold a lot quicker and maybe at a higher price. So that's why all of those vessels rerouted in the middle of being underway, is so that way they could try and take advantage of the situation that's now happening in Europe. So that appears to be showing us that the United States, or at least U.S. Companies that really are merchants in liquefied natural gas sales, are already diverting a lot of their business into Europe because they know it's going to be a profitable business, considering that there really is no alternative at this point. It was either Russian natural gas or U.S. natural gas. So now the U.S. has practically, much like the Russians did before this, an unmitigated monopoly on providing the Europeans with liquefied natural gas because the Russians are no longer an option. So it looks as though the nails are already in the coffin at this point for the Russian gas and oil producers, because the United States is already sweeping in and filling the void that they left in Europe. So it's not like the Europeans could, go, we're going to have to violate the sanctions because we can't get gas and oil. They're going to get the gas and oil from the United States instead. So fairly interesting to see with that. And good to know that the United States and the U.S. companies are already stepping in and starting to fill in that gap and largely fill that. So where the Russians could not return, or the European nations couldn't make an argument to return back to cheap Russian natural gas. But with that, it is time for us to move on from this news, because it's only a drop in the bucket. It's a piece of the news that we have today, because we were also able to hear in the Russian the Russian central government, I guess you could say, that the Russians are clearly not moving towards peace. I know many people are hearing many confusing things out there, and I do want to make it clear that it does sound really confusing. But there is a lot of confusing things that are being said deliberately by the Russians. Y'all may have heard that Putin today said that he was more than happy to talk to the president of the United States and said a whole bunch of things that are, a crock of crap, but he was saying it to just confuse the public. Some people did hear as well that the president of the United States said some things, I believe today, that I believe that he said something on a Fox News interview yesterday, towards the latter end of the day when it was released, that Zelensky was at fault for the war and they're going to have to bring it to an end. But none of those statements by Putin or the president of the United States, at least the ones I'm talking about, have any meaning to anything, because we were able to see that according to Ryabkov, who is a senior member of the Russian central government and is therefore privy to exactly Putin's plan, stated to TASS, I would like to first understand on what basis the American side intends to move towards a settlement. If on the basis of the signals we have been hearing in recent days, then this will not happen in 100 days or more, already showing that the Russian Federation is more than apt to keep the war going for a significant amount of time, because the fact of the matter is, the Russian Federation is not going to be accepting any of America's demands, and the United States is already making it incredibly clear that we're not going to be appeasing the Russian Federation either. And we've also heard an additional statement today from the Russian Foreign Ministry, which is headed by Dmitry Peskov, that the conflict will not be resolved in 100 days if the U.S. threatens sanctions. The U.S. is threatening sanctions, so the war is not ending in 100 days. So it's being made very clear from multiple different Russian central departments that have had up-to-date communications with Putin that the war is not ending at this point. They do not see the kind of conditions that would force them to the negotiating table, and they're going to try and keep this thing going hell or high water, even if the United States imposes severe and crippling sanctions on the Russian Federation here within the near future. Not only that, but statements were made by the President of the United States today as well on the other side of the continent, well, the other side of the world, really, not the other side of the continent, that is also clearly showing us that they are not seeing into the war soon either, as the President of the United States did not rule out providing the Ukrainians with the direct arms supplies from $330 billion of frozen Russian assets. And according to what we were able to hear today from Kellogg, he said, "We have repeatedly spoken about using frozen Russian assets to buy American weapons, and this will be discussed with the President." And we've also been able to hear a comment from the President. I didn't include it because we don't want to try and get folks riled up politically, because just showing the face of a president will give people rabid, whether it's this one or the last one. But beyond that, we were able to hear that he was also directly speaking about this today and said that that was a high likelihood if the Russian Federation continued on the war, which is already showing that they are coming up with ideas and solutions to be able to try and keep the war going well into the future until we bring the Russians to their knees and also push them towards the negotiating table. So at this point, it's very clear from both sides, no matter what, the war is going to be going on for quite some time at this point. It appears to be very clear. And also,
I wonder where Russia's even coming from on that, because, if their economy collapses, that's going to cause their whole country to collapse. So where are they getting this idea that they have some type of leverage to say we're going to keep it going forever? Because right now, basically, the U.S. holds all the cards. Like, if we cut off Europe from buying LNG from Russia, that's it for Russia. And surely they know that. So I'm not sure what the plan is right now from Russia, unless they plan on getting bailed out by China or one of their other allies of some sort. I'm not sure where they're coming from.
I would say I don't know where they're coming from either, but it's this bluff that the Russian Federation is fine and they'll keep running perfectly okay, whether the United States does anything or not, and they're really leaning into that and hoping that the bluff is believable. But anyone with sense would know that the bluff isn't believable, because it's not like the Russian Federation has any economic weight to throw around. They're a lightweight economically. Let's go to the GDP, let's see, top 20 GDP countries of 2024. Let's go look at this list. Let's see here. Top 15, that ought to count. Let's go look at the top 15. So, Russia was, according to this graph, in 2024 at $2.24 trillion, which would be considered generally a lightweight. Because countries even like the United Kingdom, which is really the second largest country in the Western sphere in terms of military input, is only at 2.6 trillion, which is about 400 billion more than Russia. And the United Kingdom nowadays is considered to be a bit of an economic lightweight. The only heavyweights that are seen in the entirety of the world is the United States and China. And the United States, well, let me go get I think these numbers are fudge, man, because the US number is really low compared to what was being reported, I believe, even back in 2023. Because in 2023, the GDP, according to Google, was being reported at 27 trillion. So the only economic heavyweights that exist in the world is the Chinese and the United States. And the Chinese are being absolutely gapped right now by the United States, which is truly the economic super heavyweight. And then you have some medium weights like Germany and Japan, which have economies around $4 trillion each. And then you generally have the remainder of the lightweights within the large category. And then everyone else is within the welterweights or the super welterweight categories a little bit further below that. So going off of that, it's there's no doubt about it. The Russians don't have money to throw around. It's not like they're the Chinese where they have any kind of economic influence on any other countries surrounding them. Russia actually is surrounded by countries that generally make more money than them or are a part of an economic alliance that makes more money than them. Russia borders largely most of the European Union, which is a combined economic entity at this point. They also border the Chinese. They also are close to South Korea and Japan. And by the numbers, all of these countries are either very close to the Russians economically or far outweigh them. So there's no one around them even locally that they can throw their economic weight around to keep themselves alive. It's not like they had any money to work off of in the first place. And that's why this has to be nothing more than a mere bluff by the Russians to pretend like they're a lot larger and a lot more prominent than they are. Because I don't know what else they would be doing at this point.
Yeah, I don't understand either at this point. I was just doing some research here to find out if China was somehow funding Russia some way. I still don't see any public information about how China is actually keeping their economy afloat inside of Russia. So unless they're doing something that's like, highly secret and funneling money somehow back to them, then I just don't see how China is going to come in and save them. Because once again, China is a very large GDP player, but at the same time, they're plateauing. They're not really growing very fast, and they're having some financial difficulties of their own. So if they decided to bail Russia out, that would be a very, very big move for them to make, considering that they're not really making much progress in China's economy. So I wouldn't put it past them, though. I know some people are like, "Oh no, China would never bail out Russia." We can't rule it out. It's a possibility they could bail China or bail Russia out because they figure maybe they need an ally in case a war breaks out or something like that. That could be something they're thinking in their head. But then again, I'm not really sure if that's likely or not. But it is a possibility.
And of course, we cannot really rule out anything at this point. Anything is possible and could be likely in the future. But nevertheless, we are going to be moving on into some more news that we've been able to get today, as our information yesterday appears to have confirmed that there was a, well, actually, really quickly, before we move on to that, there is a very interesting question to be asked of all of y'all. Putin wants to meet with the United States to negotiate war, and Ukraine says that there are no talks without Ukraine being involved. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts. Really quickly, I also want to say that I think this is some sort of a bluff that Putin is putting out today, because yesterday they were making it very clear that there was going to be no talks, and then today he wanted to say a whole bunch of nice things about the president, and then say, of course there can be talks. And this thing seems to be some sort of a trick or a ploy or something like that. But beyond that, a lot of people are saying that Ukraine must be involved in all talks because they're the party that's been invaded at this point, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense to leave them out of talks. Others are saying that they disagree, and there should be peace by any means, peace in our time. Some others are unsure and undecided, and some people are saying, let's see where it goes at least before we try and make a big issue about this. But nevertheless, what are people thinking about this, Matthew? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so 85% of the audience said, I agree, Ukraine must be involved in the peace talks, and while 4% said, I disagree, and there should be peace by any means, and 8% said, let's see where it goes at least. And on this one, I can really see very obviously what Putin's manipulation strategy is with this one. He's currently telling the United States leadership that he's willing to negotiate the war, which makes it seem like Russia is in the driver's seat, and it also makes it seem like Russia's trying to be fair, which they're obviously not being fair. But they're basically saying, Putin is saying, that Ukraine's implemented a ban on peace talks, and any peace talks between Russia and Ukraine would be illegitimate because Zelensky has banned those talks, which is completely false. He's not banned anything. He simply wants a fair negotiation. That's all he wants. So Putin is basically saying, let's cut Ukraine out of the picture. Let's just talk between the U.S. and Russia, and between these two major powers, allegedly, they're going to figure out how to divide up Ukraine where Putin gets a huge chunk of it. That's a huge insult to Zelensky. It's also a huge manipulation tactic by Putin on the U.S. administration as well. And so far, there's been no official response from the U.S. admin, so don't be too worried right now that it's actually going to go anywhere. I think pretty much anybody with like a 5-year-old brain could see this very obvious manipulation tactic, and it's not going to really go anywhere. So I would say it's a dead end, but I think Ukraine should be involved in every single peace talk. If they're not involved, then something's going terribly wrong. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say I believe that Ukraine must always be involved. Ukraine is an active belligerent in the conflict. It would make no sense to really rule them out. It would be a lot like ruling out South Korea in the peace negotiations at the end of World War II, which generally did not, although there wasn't an active peace treaty that was enforced in between North and South Korea, still at the same time, they were present at the negotiating table when that was being conducted. So that would seem to me to be showing that they have to be involved. Everyone's always involved. I mean, if you have two active fighting parties and the United States is stepping in to try and broker a peace, you don't really broker a peace without one of the two sides being involved. That doesn't really make any sense at all. So of course they're going to have to be involved in some sort of an actual peace agreement or peace negotiations. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what we would know right now. But moving on from that, we were also able to hear within the area of the Middle East that more C-17 flights have been conducted from Ramstein Air Base and to the area of Rejau, taking a stop inside of Israel. We are largely understanding at this point that this is most likely transferring a THAAD air defense battery to Poland, or maybe sending an Israeli Patriot air defense system into Poland to be forwarded into Ukraine, considering that the Israelis are retiring the large majority of their Patriot air defense systems. We do not really know which one of those it is yet, but it is becoming fairly clear that this isn't any sort of a quick transfer or a little pleasure trip that these aircraft are taking. They are working on transporting some kind of equipment from Israel and into Poland. But with that, I hope we were able to address that little side note of information well. And moving on out of that area and into Ukraine, well, really back into the Russian Federation, we have loads of additional follow-up news of the damage from the attacks that occurred yesterday, and a little bit of video and picture evidence to back that up. But still, we have loads of questions to talk about, a large amount, as a matter of fact. And I have to say that tonight is a very interesting night, to say the least, with practically every single mainstream news organization lying out of their ass to everyone, and also a whole bunch of other things happening. It is really chalked up to already be an interesting night as it is. And I gotta thank the 10.2 thousand people who are here right now watching, because we're very honored and very appreciative to know that y'all are getting your news from here and not from some backwater half-ass channel like CNN or Fox, because that would be a pretty tough place to get news these days. But beyond that, Matthew, what kind of questions do we have?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat of the night. This one is going to go to Joseph Andronaco, who's a longtime channel legend, and he put in a $100 donation. And thank you very much, Joseph, for the biggest support of the night, and we appreciate that very much, of course. He said, with all the potential bad news, here's a fun one for the rabbit hole. What is an M1 thumb?
That is an interesting question. It is a thing. It's kind of a myth, but it's somewhat true as well, that when you use an M1 Garand and you reload it, let me see. This is a pretty good picture here. So this is an M1 Garand, and this is the actual. This is the action of the M1 Garand up here, and this is the M block. The M1 Garand doesn't use a detachable box magazine, and it also doesn't use a stripper clip. It uses a special kind of a. It's not really a clip, but I call it a clip. It's called an M block, and it's just a little piece of metal that holds all 8 rounds together. And then you open up the top. Well, you take that charging handle right here with the mouse. You pull that back until it locks in place, and it holds this bolt back, and then you shove the end block down into the pretty much open hole that now exists inside of the rifle, and as it pushes down, it pushes on a lever which releases the bolt and allows for the gun to continue to operate after it's loaded. What is interesting about that is that there is a kind of a myth that you can get Garand thumb, which is what happens when you reload the rifle. You push the end block in, but then the bolt or the action slams forward and crushes your thumb as you're pushing the end block in. Me personally, I actually have a couple of M1 Garands, and I can attest that that does not happen. I've never seen it happen, especially when you actually have a full end block. I've never seen the bolt slam forward fast enough that it would crush your thumb. As a matter of fact, it really never slams forward, at least on any of the Garands that I've seen. The bolt will release, and it will push forward a little bit, but it actually doesn't even push forward enough to chamber one round. You actually have to take the palm of your hand and strike the charging handle forward to actually cycle the action for the large part, and then put it into battery, which is where the bullet is fully seated inside the chamber, and the bolt is directly flush to the back of the bullet, well, not really the bullet, but the casing, and the firing pin is directly aligned with the primer ready to fire. I've never really seen that happen. Now, one way you can get Grand Thumb, and Grand Thumb is pretty nasty if you ever get it, is by pulling the action back and not pushing an end block in, and then just sticking your thumb down onto that lever that's in the opening of the Garand at that point. You will have the bolt slam forward on your thumb at that point, and it will break it. I mean, it's got enough force that it would either hurt really bad or it would break it. But I personally have never done that. Like whenever you're messing around with a Garand and you do not have a loaded in block in it, and you're just wanting to close the bolt, what you do is you just put one hand, like you kind of like rest the butt of the Garand on your thigh, and you use one hand to hold the charging handle back, and then you use the other one to push down the lever. And once the bolt is set loose, you just slowly ease it forward, pull your thumb out of the way, and then let it go. And that's how you largely close the action of a Garand without breaking your thumb or something along those lines. But still, Garands are pretty cool. Really interesting rifle. Of course, the main service rifle of U.S. forces from 1934 to well on after the end of World War II, actually. I believe this was the service rifle up until about 1955 or 1956. But it was a fairly interesting one. It was the only semi-automatic that was standard issue in World War II. Although it uses a very different system than, I guess you could say, the modern semi-automatics would, especially with an end block. But one thing that was cool is that John Claes Garand, who was the guy who designed this, actually got the idea for that end block from the Fusil Automatique Model 1917, which is this thing up here at the top. And here's a couple of other semi-automatics. These are horrendous. But beyond that, let me see if I can show y'all how this one will work, because it kind of worked with a similar sort of a system. So here we go. So you would pop open the bottom of the pretty much of the internal magazine, I guess you can call it. There was a spring in there, and you would pretty much load up a 3-round stripper clip into the thing. It did not hold a lot of ammo, and that was kind of a bit of an issue with this thing, is that it only held 3 rounds. But the French did try to start pumping this thing out in larger numbers during World War I, crazily enough. And so the French were, I believe at that point, the only people in World War I that were actually fielding in infantry units semi-automatic rifles. And John Claes Garand, who is the guy who designed the M1 Garand, he actually got a lot of inspiration off of this to create the end block that is famous at this point inside the M1 Garand, because it makes that pinging sound when it ejects after being emptied. So it's a really interesting thing, kind of like the design of the M1 Garand. And another cool thing, just another small rabbit hole to add to this, to kind of add more interest into this maybe, is that the original M1 Garand prototype actually was pretty much the M14. And let me go see if I can find the prototype. So let's see here. Ah, yes. I see you know your judo well. Let's see here. I'm trying to see if I can find the best example. I'm not trying to find the Winchester ones where they're like, hey, let's improve it better. I'm really just trying to find the one that Garand actually showed to the Army Board of Acquisition. And I'm not seeing it here at the moment. It was in the Grand Collector's magazine that I got recently. Wait a minute. Oh, dang it. I don't think I'll be able to find... Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. I think that this is on Forgotten Weapons, but I believe this was one of the original Garand prototypes, and it actually had a detachable box magazine. They ended up removing it, however, because it generally was too expensive for the time. Box magazines are really expensive to produce, especially when we're talking about the springs and the internal systems, at least during that era, so no one really wanted to use them a lot, and usually if there was a detachable box magazine, they'd only issue one per soldier. So once your box magazine ran out, you had to like manually hand load it and then reload it into the rifle to continue to use it. So they went with the M block because it was a lot cheaper and a lot more efficient for the time. But later on, they would once again revisit the detachable box magazine, and then you would see that the M14 would become the standard service rifle, which largely had the same operating system as the M1 Garand, but actually did use the detachable box magazine. So pretty interesting stuff there. And I got to thank you for the massive support, Joseph Andronako, and supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would not be able to make this channel possible and keep this thing running. And so a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. But a huge thanks to you so much once again.
Yes, indeed. And our next one here is going to go to save 15% or more. And that sounds like an insurance commercial or something, but thank you very much for that $50 donation. I believe that is your first ever support of the channel, but YouTube didn't say that for some reason. I don't know why, but if it is or isn't, huge thanks for that support. And he said, God bless America and God bless our troops. And gentlemen, start your engines.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I got to thank you for the kind words as well. And I got to say, God bless America, God bless our troops, and gentlemen, start your engines. That's actually from NASCAR. I've heard that like audio clip before. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. Save 15% or more on car insurance. And thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. I had the car insurance part. Because if it wasn't for folks like you who threw in support like that, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible each and every day and be able to make sure that we got the news out to y'all every single day of what was going on around the world at this point. And so with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again. And I believe that is your first time supporting, so a massive thanks for that as well, because folks like you who go out of your way to support a channel that you don't have to support help us to be able to do this as a job, do this as our living, and not only that, fact check the entirety of mainstream news, because they cannot get things right to save the life of them. And it's really crazy to think that, because they have hundreds of millions of dollars in budgeting, and we're just two dudes running the show on YouTube, and we're getting it right and they're getting it wrong. And that's not even a subjective thing. That's not even something where I'm going to say, well, maybe I'm wrong. No, they literally just got that outright wrong. Like, you can just go look at the proof. It's wrong. But anyways, with that, huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news that we have tonight. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right. And also, by the way, I see Gunfox. I see you threw in a super chat, but I see you want me to read them all in one block. So we're going to save that for our next segment, because I want to read all three at one time. So we will save that for the next segment, literally first thing next segment. And our last one here of this segment is going to go to James Hughes, who puts in a $30 donation. And thank you very much, James, for that $30 support. And he said, with Russia in such a weakened state, do you think it is possible that China invades in the East? And will the West come to the aid of Russia?
I believe that that's highly unlikely. Generally, the time of conquest of lands for any reason has pretty much passed, at least in the modern age. The Russian Federation is the only one that really seems to be trying to exert that kind of an idea, at least on a major scale. But beyond that, the Chinese really do not have any ambitions to reclaim this area of Russia. The People's Republic of China does not recognize that as a legitimate Chinese land. Interestingly enough, Taiwan actually does, but China does not. So they would never retake this, because they simply do not consider this to be a part of China. So it'd be incredibly hard to justify a claim to the land, because the People's Republic of China doesn't claim it as theirs. So I would say that that's highly unlikely, if not impossible, for that to ever really happen. And also, we've seen that the Chinese have never really shown great interest in controlling that area. Let me see really quickly if I can show you all that. Let's see. PRC claimed lands. Let's see here. Territorial disputes. Let me see if I can get you all a map here of what the People's Republic of China claims they're supposed to be. Let's see here. Yes, I see you know your judo well. Let me just go find a map. Here we go.
They claim they're supposed to be the best in the world, like North Korea.
Here is why Chinese land grabs are the best in the world. And so here it is. This is largely the areas that China claims that they control. You can see that they're in orange. And also, the People's Republic of China does claim that Mongolia is kind of sort of not really theirs. They really don't claim that a lot. That's really the Republic of China. But you can once again see that there is a little area around the Amur River that they claim is theirs. That's it. They do not claim Vladivostok. They do not claim the rest of East Russia. They'll never really have an ambition or a plan to take it. If they did, it would be a little bit wild. And also, you can see this right here as well. This is an actual map published in China showing the People's Republic of China. And you can see that really the only major landmass that they show that they want, and it's not really theirs, is Taiwan, which they included on the map, but they did not highlight in red because it's not commie. So I hope that addresses that the best we can, because that's largely the case, is that they're not really going to be ever taking East Russia. And so the question of would we support Russia never would be an issue, because they would never do that. And also on top of that, the Russians could just nuke the Chinese. So that really stops them from ever claiming any land in the first place. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, at least the best I can off the knowledge that we have at the moment. And a big thanks to you so much once again for support, James Hughes, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, we would not be able to keep this thing running and make this thing possible. And so with that, it is now time for us to move on into the remainder of the news that we have tonight. And we have a load, a massive load. Yes, that is true, Walter Illicoda. They do claim Inner Mongolia, and Inner Mongolia has technically been, since 1949, an official part of the People's Republic of China. So yes, that is a part that they claim because they administer that right now. But moving on from that and on into the rest of the news that we have within the area of the Ukraine war for the large part, we have been able to see that there was a fire that started again near to the Morozovsk airfield. We do not know why, and we really don't know what started it. But here's some snap, crackles, and pops.
They love fires out there in Russia. Nice fires, big fires, the best fires.
The greatest fires, the longest lasting fires, wonderful fires. And it's really interesting to see because, once again, Morozovsk has been bombarded by the Ukrainians in the past. Here's the airfield right here. And it appears that there was another fire that started here. We do not know on what, and we do not know how much damage it's caused yet. But hopefully we'll be able to get information on that tomorrow in an update. However, we did get good information on what happened at the Ryazan refinery today, and that thing is cooking. It's still on fire as of this point. Also, this is footage, by the way, I forgot to mention, this is footage from last night showing an additional angle of Ukrainian drones attacking the Ryazan refinery, but the next clip we're going to show y'all is from today, showing that the fire is still burning. Oh, блядь! And there's the refinery and the thermal power plant, both hidden on fire.
I like when the Russians are shocked that they've never seen a drone attack before in their life.
Oh my god!
Oh my god, look! Are we at war? Oh yes, we are at war.
Oh, wanna!
Oh.
Пизда, блядь!
This guy's hysterical.
He's absolutely losing it. Send him to the infirmary now. But we also got to see that the fire was burning continuously today, as footage was filmed today, showing the smoke and the flame still rising from that refinery. The fire has not been put out. Interesting indeed. Nevertheless, it's good to see that that fire is still burning, and moving on out of that area and out of Ryazan and towards Bryansk, we were also able to see that a Pantsir appears to have caused a little bit of collateral damage. Pantsir rocket hit the top of that building. It missed its target, so it just ended up knocking out a Russian building in exchange. Ha! Huh. A little odd, but kind of crazy right there. But still, showing us that the attacks from last night produced a significant amount of damage in Ryazan and some collateral damage in the area of Bryansk, conducted, crazily enough, by a Russian missile that went errant and off course. But moving on from that, now the Bryansk area, it's now time for us to get on into the frontline news that we have inside of Ukraine. And moving on into the Kursk Oblast, we were able to see more Russian drones being intercepted and taken down. We can see this is being done by the 82nd Air Mobile Brigade. And we can see their drone trying to catch up to that Russian kamikaze there as the screen gives me an apoplectic fit. We can also see the drone continuing to get closer and closer. The Lancet just chilling, trying to make its way.
Is that like the only drone that Russia uses these days is the Lancet now? So this is the most common drone we see on the video.
I mean, respectfully, it kind of is. I think. Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, they've lost everything else. What happened to everything? I thought they used to have one of those little, like, flying wing, like Horton Who or sort of Horton Sees a Hoe type things.
Man, and I tell you, man, there's a lot of hoes out there in the Russian armed forces. And we also get to see the Chimera unit hitting some Russian vehicles as well. And it appears that they hit a BMD. For some reason, BMDs are just becoming incredibly common in the Kursk Oblast. And holy moly, did you see that crater?
What hit that, though? Like a freaking meteor.
Gromit? Did that crater just channel to the center of the earth? Dude, that's like 50 feet deep.
That's crazy, man. What was that?
I have no clue. Like a 2,000-pound bomb? I don't even know. That's a huge crater, though. But they still hit the BTR. Well, actually, it was a BMD again, crazily enough. We now see them going after what appears to be a MTLB, and now it's another BMD. I'm telling you, like, I don't even have to identify them. They're all BMDs, it seems, at this point.
I see people speculating. They said, did a nuke go off there? That's what a hooky redneck said. I don't know what the hell went off there, but that was a hell of a crater. Like, I've never really seen a crater quite like that from any munition we've seen used before. But have you seen anything like that?
I've seen stuff like that, but it's usually created from Russian ballistic missiles.
Yeah, that's crazy. I don't even know what would cause that.
Man, I mean, it was like legitimately crazy. But that's
That was insane.
But that's the end of that clip, and great to see the Chimera unit doing their part in blasting the Russians and also showing us that crazy crater. We also got to see that the LSA, well, not the LSA, but the 82nd Air Mobile Brigade was also able to stop a Russian advance in this area. Sorry, I was trying to see what was going on in the live chat there. A little bit of an interesting statement. But nevertheless, we can see the Russian advance trying to make its way across the fields near to, let's see, I believe it's Lyubomovka. And we can see the lead Russian vehicle getting hit pretty badly. We now see the rest of them in panic. My goodness. It appears that this one's being dismounted from, and it looks like all the Russians are running to the hills.
Oh, man, look at this.
Oh
my God. That guy was doing the inchworm. Did you see him?
Man, he was inchworming.
Yeah, he literally did the inchworm.
We see them now hitting the Russian vehicles a little bit further. Ah, yes. I see you know your judo well. Good one. And you, sir, are you ready to receive my limp APC? How dare you, sir? Oh, man, you thought I was about to say it, didn't you?
Oh, man. Now, you see, the history of the inchworm goes back a long time in the history of warfare. There's been a lot of men that does the inchworm on the battlefield. It's been a thing. It's a long time honored tradition. Look at that, a little turret toss or something. What was that, a piece of scrap metal or a turret?
I think it was, but nevertheless, Matthew, getting back to the history of the inchworm as a combat tactic was used by the Wampanoags in the 1620s in support of the Pilgrims who were conducting a war against the Squampusets within the southern area of the Massachusetts Bay region. But nevertheless, moving on from that.
I never heard that one.
I made that whole thing up. Like, it's like I made all of it up. I know. But beyond that, we did get to see, Matthew, speaking of which, that there are other things rather than Lancets these days. We did get to see another Bila getting destroyed, which we can see right here. Any second now. Boop. And they got
hit it. They hit my brother Bilo.
Man, they're getting another one. Another one.
Look. Say hello to my cousin Bilo.
Man, they got like 6 of these things.
Like, it's like they're either playing the same thing over and over, or it's 6 different drones.
It's 6 different drones, crazily enough, but they all look like the same thing almost. Anyways, that's the end of that clip right there. Very nice to see. And moving on from that and into our next clip, we were also able to see the 47th Brigade hitting some Russian forces within the Kursk Oblast with air drones. Y'all want to see it, don't you? Of course you do. And here it comes. That looks like a BMP for once, not a BMD. We now see them hitting another APC. We now see them going after some Russians down there on the ground. And we see them hitting some more Russian APCs as well.
Somebody said, the $330 billion is not held in the U.S. Man, you guys need to check some of your news items. We didn't say it was held in the U.S. We said it was frozen Russian assets. Read, man. Come on.
God. When will this
end? Media. CNN hired this man.
Oh, man. CNN will hire him, and then they'll have him on there as an analyst, and he'll be going, you see, all the funding's been stopped, see? And it's not. There's already pre-exempted.
Man, they can't hire him, though, because they're laying off like a load of people. Like, they can't hire anybody. They're firing.
Yeah, but still, for some reason, people will believe them. I don't know why. It's like, what a conundrum. And then someone also said, we can get 10,000 people in the chat, but we can't get 10,000 people to march. Like March. If you want 10,000 people in March, go join the army. Damn. So what do you want? Like it's like, and I get it. But also we can get 10,000 people to watch this show instead of marching. Because honestly, watching this show does a little bit more than just walking around in the middle of the street and kind of stopping people from getting to work. Just being entirely honest there with you. But moving on from that and on down into the location unknowns, we were able to see a training exercise with the 31st Mechanized Brigade. And look at them. They're training for chemical warfare. And we can see them here wearing GP5 gas masks. Hope those filters don't have asbestos in them. Because if you all do not know, the GP5, originally issued during Soviet times, all were issued with additional asbestos filters, not charcoal filters. So that is a little interesting. Hopefully, they have been able to take care of health and safety concerns with these GP5 gas masks. Otherwise, these guys may be breathing through these filters, and those filters may have had a broken asbestos disc inside of them that may be allowing them to breathe in a large amount of asbestos fibers, which would not be good for them. But still,
it's like they're honoring the Enforcer channel here with wearing the Enforcer logo on their face.
Man, it really kind of is. It brings a tear to my eye. But we can see them here again. Really cool pictures. I mean, those gas masks are scary. Like, they're legitimately scary. Like, whenever you see anyone wearing those, you go, oh my god, here's all my money, don't shoot me. It's like that kind of a deal. I gotta say, I like them. I think it's good. But anyways, moving on from that and on into the next clip, we were also able to see the training of snipers. Look at that. Whoa.
Oh, yes, he has that net. I like that.
Man, and look at these guys. Their faces are a little bit blurred out, a little bit, to be entirely honest.
Like a wrap cover.
And we see them, we can see them adjusting their scopes here, their optics, for windage and elevation. And we can also see here this guy holding the suppressor in some. I think he's screwing the suppressor off of the rifle or on. I can't really tell.
Also, did you check that Amazon bipod? Did you go back for a second? That's that bipod you can get off of Amazon right there. I recognize that one.
Here is why Ukraine's bipods are the best in the world. Yeah.
Is Prime still delivering? I guess they're delivering.
What kind of an optic do these are these guys using anyways? Let's see. Can you tell what kind of an optic that is? I can't.
I can't tell from here, honestly. I really can't even speculate at all because I can't really tell what mount that is, nor can I tell what the scope is either.
Here is why Ukrainian snipers use Amazon mounts. it's just like, man, I'm telling you. Also, someone said this was an Accuracy International rifle. Those are fairly expensive, but the bipod probably isn't. I think Matthew's right. Yeah, I think they skimped out on the bipod there. But anyways, moving on from that and on into our next clip, we were also able to see this angry Russian commander. Look at this guy. He's just angry. I can't even read the subtitles. He's that angry.
Бегом, сука, машину, блядь! Завалю нахуй всех, блядь! Где экипировка, сука, блядь, пидоры, блядь!
Also, by the way, if you're wondering what's that sound of gunfire next to his head, he's actually shooting his service pistol up in the air as they're running, because he's that angry. He's a mentally well-balanced commander, I says. Also, this video is now buffed. Oh, there we go. Uh-oh.
Oh my god.
Бегом, сука, ёбаная залезла! Ты пидор, блядь! Я вас, сука, повалю нахуй!
Oh my goodness! Oh, and it's unloaded, so what the hell kind of a threat is this? It's like he fired his last round a moment ago, so he's just aiming a empty, unloaded pistol at this guy. Still, kind of...
Wait a minute, what is that? He said, don't you know the route, you condom? What the hell kind of insult is that? Damn, this guy's just saying all kinds of crazy stuff. He's so angry. But what kind of pistol is that, by the way?
This is a Makarov.
A Makarov? Yeah, that looks like some old-timey looking pistol right there. That's crazy.
Yeah, you know, it's a direct blowback pistol. It's an old thing. Checks out.
Оставили, суки, все! За мной!
I just realized it's empty.
Yeah, he's like, oh. He's like, he had to push the...
This is what you call a good old-fashioned crash out.
Man, this guy really did have a crash out. I also like the part where you pushed the camera onto his groin for the last 10 seconds for real effect, like to show how angry he was. I really appreciated that part. But beyond that, let's see. You know, honestly, this was just such an interesting and entertaining watch. Are y'all wanting to watch it again? Because I kind of want to watch it again. What do you think, Matthew?
I think so, but real quick before we watch it, though, just to get the story correct, based on what the crazy guy was saying, these guys allegedly ran off and left other people behind because they were scared. Is that the whole situation?
Apparently, maybe.
Interesting. Or they just ran off, or, you can't really tell, they could be lying.
What could have happened is that an FPV drone could have wiped out most everyone, and they ended up running away. And so now this guy's going to act like they didn't go on their meat grinder assault until they all ended up getting killed. So then he's pissed at him. But let's watch it one more time, because everyone wants to see it again.
Бегом, сука, машину, блядь!
I like how at the start he's going, "Run, bitch, run!" Like in that movie, like he's legitimately doing it.
Нахуй всех, блядь! Где экипировка, сука, блядь, пидоры, блядь! Все в машину, суки, блядь! Ублюдки, блядь, трусы ебаные, нахуй! Завалю, сука, всех!
I like how he's so filled with rage that he remembered to turn on his camera, though, before he started his rage, so that way he could film it, so that way he could show everyone back home how much of a badass he is.
Oh, you know what he's doing? I think I figured out what he's trying to do here, because that doesn't make any sense. If they just got done running off, and supposedly these guys are cowards he's filming right here, and he's the commander of the cowards, and now they're running away, but yet he's filming them at the same time, he's also a coward, because now he's trying to put his guys under the bus, so that way when he returns back to his commander, he can show the video and say, see, the cowards ran off, I had no choice but to leave with them.
Yeah, I think that is the case.
Бегом, сука, ебаная залезла! Ты пидор, блядь! Я вас, сука, повалю нахуй! Ты чё, машину?
The unloaded pistol really just adds to the comedic effect to all that.
Ты знаешь, ты гандон! Оставили, суки, все! За мной!
Also, by the way,
why isn't the tough guy staying behind? That's my question too. Like they said in the chat, that this guy's running away too. That's very telling.
Also, by the way, Captain Badass here couldn't even release the slide on his Makarov properly. I just saw that. So let me go get you all Makarov because I actually have one of these and I know how to release the slide on this thing. So you do one of two things. Here we go. Here's the Makarov. So you do one of two things with this pistol. You can either pull the slide a little bit further back, and then it'll just naturally release like any pistol, and then it'll, fall forward. The hammer will still be back, though, until you flick it to safe, and then the hammer will flip up. But there's another way to do it, which is pushing this slide release right here. You push that down, and then the slide releases, and the whole slide moves forward back into the ready or battery position, like it is in this picture right here. This guy tried to do it. Watch, Matthew. He tried to do it, but he fumbled it, and his thumb flipped forward onto the release like an inch in front of it instead of on it. Like, watch.
За мной!
Here it comes. See, he's trying to do it right there, and then he just gives up and tries to holster it while the slide's still back.
Oh, yeah, that's crazy, dude.
Look at that, he's still trying. So he finally did.
Russians are the biggest badass in the world, said literally nobody.
Here is why Sergeant Screamer is the best in the world. It's like he is not. Also, someone said the gun is junk. Whoa, hey. I'm not going to have y'all dissing on this Makarov, all right? Like, yes, it looks like crap, but I got to be honest with y'all, it's actually not that bad. Like, for a pistol, for a direct blowback pistol, that is, it's not that bad. Interestingly enough, it's actually designed off of a German gun, the Walther PP. He said it, but it's actually designed off of this one. This was actually produced for German officers during World War II, and also pilots and a couple of other things. But this pistol is actually pretty decent, and all of the design principles of the Makarov were taken directly from the Walther PP and then turned into this, and used a proprietary cartridge, the 9x18, not the 9x19, like the normal 9mm that you would see in the United States. I've shot them a pretty decent bit. I'm not gonna lie, they're not that bad for what they are. I personally would use something American, like a Colt Anaconda in 44 Magnum, or a 1911, or any other American design that shoots 9mm, like a Browning high power, but it's not that bad for what it is, for just like a sidearm pistol kind of a deal from the mid-century. It's not that bad. But in the modern day, this thing is fairly dated. There's like a million other things that would be better. Like, for one, I would just say The Browning High Power. It would be far better, this thing. Like, this is far better. Almost from the same time. Actually, I think it is from... I think this thing actually... Yeah, this thing is from earlier than the Makarov. The Makarov was produced from 1951 to the present day. The Browning High Powers were being produced from 1935 to the present still. And these things hold a decent amount of rounds. I would actually say that this thing is comparable to a Glock in terms of magazine capacity. It still uses a 9x19, just like a Glock, but it also has safety features built in that the Glock does not. So I just personally like these far better because... Browning High Powers are really just where it's at, in my opinion. So it's a little bit crazy to me, man, to think that the Soviet Union was like, you know what, we're going to design this crappier, far worse pistol by even contemporary standards in the middle of the Cold War and issue that to everybody. It's like they could have just come up with a good one, but then they came up with this. It's all right, but, it's not as good as the alternatives that are out there. Anyways... It is time for us to move on from that and on into the casualty report because the casualties were pretty decent today. So let's check it out. Holy moly!
Oh, the losses were high once again. It looks like Mystice saying that the 7-day average is consistently in the 1500s, and I would say that's a very astute observation. The losses are high, but only one Bobcat today, sadly, but still, though. Let's hear the rest of them.
And man, the losses were crazy. Troop losses for the 7-day average was consistently in the 1500s, slightly less than in December. Drop in artillery and drones and vehicles remain high for the past 2 weeks, according to Mestiza, keeper of the records. And the numbers are high. 1,500 Russians and Norks were wounded and killed in the past 24 hours, along with 11 APCs, 87 supply trucks, 2 main battle tanks, 39 artillery pieces, 51 drones, 1 MLRS, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. All in all, or all in number, pretty good, and it's good to see these kinds of losses being inflicted on the Russians on a day-to-day basis. So with that, it's time for us to move on into our next piece of news. Moving on over into the Vovchansk area, we were able to see the 3rd Brigade taking some pics. Look, this guy's drinking the Rimp-Off Monster called Burn. Feel the burn, I suppose. See what I did there?
Burn. Oh, yeah.
The top 1% of this country owns half of this country's social media websites. But we were also able to see here, these guys just chilling again. Really nice rifles, really nice kit. All in all, not that bad. Moving on from that, now the Vovchansk area, we were also able to see within the northeastern front, Russian equipment getting hit really hard, including a zoo park. And this was all done by the 14th Brigade. You see them looking through the fog, and they found their first target. There it is, a Bukim 2.
And guess what? What are they going to do to it? What are they going to do to it? What are they going to do? What are they going to do?
Oh,
They're going to put it out of its misery, Jack. They're going to take it out behind the woodshed.
Listen. They're going to, rebuke it.
why? That joke is as old as me. It's like,
Hey, come on, Jack. I mean, give me a break, Anyway.
what happened? Oh, what do you mean, Jack?
Look. I took Amtrak my entire life. I rode the train everywhere. I'm telling you what. I'm telling you something. It's crazy.
Step back and stand by.
What we really need is some tallow up in this burger. But moving on from
I
that,
think that we ought to really give some more thought to that tallow and standing back and standing by.
and also,
I can't even do the invitation tonight for some reason. I don't know why. Like, I just drank the coffee like 30 minutes ago. I forgot to make a coffee tonight. My brain is not functioning. I don't know if anybody can tell that or not, but it's not quite snapping like it usually does. But it's getting there. It's getting there.
I'm going to be honest with all of y'all, just being completely honest. Some of y'all might be hearing I'm not really that high with and bristling with energy. I woke up today and just did not feel good. Like, I'm not sick or anything. I just feel under the weather for some reason. Not really feeling that great, but I'm still powering through. Hopefully it doesn't sound that different. I hope it doesn't. But I don't know. Like, for some reason today, I'm just out of the roof. And the news is huge, mind you, but just, not really in perfect running order. But still, there is a BMP-1 TS. These things are a little bit rare, but they're still incredibly cool. And they were using this thing out in the fields. Really neat to see. Moving on from that and out of that clip, and moving further on down the line and towards Tsiev, we also get to see some Ukrainian Leopard 2s. Look at them. A lot of them, actually.
I like a leopard. Like, these leopards are clean.
Man, you know something, man? I heard that the noise inside of these leopards is incredibly loud when you're firing them, and that's why all the crew members are known as Deaf Leopard.
Deaf leopard. The funny thing about the Deaf Leopards is they actually started off as gunners, they moved to drivers, and then they started playing instruments, and then they started that band.
Man, actually, I heard that they don't play instruments, they read instruments in the driver's compartment.
I heard that they don't play instruments at all, and that they're actually animals.
Whoa. Look at that
Not the band, I'm
boiler.
talking about the animal.
Yeah. But moving on from that, we didn't get to see an FPV drone getting shot down today. Oh, FPV! Nazad. They hit
Why
that.
is that in English?
Also, one other thing, Matthew, why in the world did the Omega logo show up like it was Red Dead Redemption and he was going into like that like slow motion mode to get into like the aimbot, you know, pretty much? I was like, what's up with this?
Gonna turn on the aimbot, blad. Good time to cheat.
We can see here, they're firing at the drone. They're trying to take that thing down before it can hurt them. We now see them trying to move towards shelter, just in case they possibly fail. Oh, and they hit it! Holy moly!
Oh.
Bing! There it went, and it's going down, baby.
Also, is he shooting with an AR? That looks like an AR.
That is an AR. Here is why
That's
Ukrainian
why.
rifles are the best in the world. It uses ARs exclusively, which is an American design. It's like, hey.
That's why he was able to hit it then, because it's very accurate, unlike the AK, which can barely hit the broadside of a barn.
Hey, don't talk about the AK like that, man.
You know it's right, man. You know it's right. It's not about being accurate with an AK. It's about putting down that heat and putting down that heat.
But you know, a real service rifle that was just pinpoint accurate was the FAL, the FAL in 308. Man, those those things are like pinpoint tack drivers, honestly, for a service rifle. I really love those. But anyways, that's the end of the clip. Great to see that they were able to shoot down that FPV. And moving on from that and down into the area Pokrovsk, we also got to see a true survivor. This Ukrainian soldier took 2 gunshot wounds to the head and survived. This isn't graphic, by the way, because it actually bounced off of his helmet. But anyways, here's the clip.
Обходить с левой стороны? Справа. Справа, хорошо. Но перед обходом туда гранату закидываем.
Chit-chat.
Просто гранатку на всякий, профилактическую.
За Рейнара.
Рейнара?
Рейнара.
А.
Блядь, не в ту сторону. Я извиняюсь.
Sitting chit-chatting here.
Заходи.
See, I was getting a grenade ready.
За Купера, да.
Так, Цинкович?
Oh, no.
And here he goes.
Oh.
And he
Oh,
got
my
hit
God.
in the head right there. It would hit his helmet and the top right side for him. And he went right back down to the ground.
Сука!
Oh, my God.
Believe it or not, the guy is fine. Like, that's the crazy thing.
Oh
He
my
took 2
God.
rounds to the head, bounced off of his helmet. He might be concussed, most likely concussed, but that is still crazy that he didn't get killed or wounded severely, and he largely survived that. That shows y'all, once again, the actual effect of a helmet. I mean, like, generally helmets aren't even supposed to protect from that kind of business, especially at close ranges, but that guy is one hell of a lucky guy right there. Stunned, of course, but still alive, showing you the good efforts of a well-protected helmet. But anyways, moving on through the rest of the clip.
He probably thought it was all over, too.
Man, we can see him now lob the grenade. He's still there. He's still mentally there, dude. He got up and tossed the grenade. The guy's a legend.
Дым, прикрытие!
We now see him laying down fire on the Russians.
На, мой колуха, мою!
That is insane. Like, that was just like an inch or 2 away from, like, instead of hitting the helmet, hitting somewhere, you know, critical.
Like his face, you know? Like,
Yeah.
Сука, надо откатиться. Откатиться.
Откатись! Отходи за меня!
Да. Сейчас. Сейчас, блядь.
we now see them trying to figure out the next move here. We can see the guy who actually got hit in the head there, sitting alongside the wall of the building, still firing at the Russians.
Держу. Ебать ты везучий, черт. Похуй. Ебать.
Somebody said, this is a normal day in the office. Nah, I think getting shot in the helmet, that's an unusual day in the office. That's not a regular occurrence.
That's new. Generally, once again, I want to remind many, helmets are not really supposed to survive, at least until very recently, any kind of rifle fire. Usually, rifle caliber rounds would pass right through any helmet. Most helmets were only level 3 or level 3 plus, which while protecting against some smaller calibers, generally rifle-grade calibers of an armor-piercing variety of bullets, bullets would be able to pass through the helmet quite easily. It's only been recently that some helmets have been able to get into that level 3 plus or almost level 4 category of armor protection, which is a very new thing. It's only come around over the past few years, and we're now seeing that that's also able to protect against rifle shots to the head. But still a wild thing to see that that was the case, and that guy actually managed to survive 2 bullet impacts to the top of the head right there because of that helmet. Truly an amazing thing. Also, before we move on, we have been able to see that the U.S. is considering sending $330 billion in frozen Russian assets to Ukraine if Putin doubles down, and a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so real quick to return back to this topic real quick. We mentioned it earlier, but the U.S. is considering sending that $333 billion in frozen Russian assets, which may or may not be held by the United States. That's not what the statement we're making here, but they might be sending that $333 billion to Ukraine if Putin decides to act stupid or more stupid. So 77% said that will be the new Ukrainian aid soon, while 7% said that will never happen and it's being ruled out, and 9% said it all depends on Putin. And here's the way I foresee it going. That $330 billion right there is going to be the new Ukraine aid eventually, because Putin is not going to play fair. He's not going to negotiate fairly. And also Ukraine is not going to be giving in to all these manipulation tactics that Putin is trying to put on everybody right now. So I have a feeling this will be the way the U.S. justifies sending more aid to Ukraine, is by saying that it's not the U.S. money, it's frozen Russian money. That's the way they'll try to justify it, to send more aid to Ukraine to keep them running in the war. So I'm with the 78%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be with the 78% as well for pretty much those exact same reasons, so I won't add any more to it. It's pretty much dead on the nail what I was thinking. But moving on from that and into the rest of the news that we have in Pokrovsk, we were able to see that the Russians are beginning to send them cripples out. And we actually now have proof of that, because we were able to see one of the meat assault wave units right here, and everyone's got crushes and other kinds of stuff that they have been given from the field hospitals and then told to go right back out to the front and join the next assaults.
Все сейчас автоматы дают, броню и надо... Ну как, Олег, вот как это, ебать? Вон медик ходит, ему похуй.
Oh my God, Oleg. That one guy won't even show his face.
Вот так вот, чтобы не видно телефон. Мы снимаем, все, отправка. Все, отправка. Переписывают нахуй. И пацаны пошли на штурм сейчас. Сейчас к вечеру пойдут, ну или с утра нахуй. Сейчас их отвезут нахуй, на Киевку и отправят. Вот так вот. Да, вот пацаны. Все, ебать, приехали нахуй.
What are they even expecting these guys to do at this point? Because they're in crutches. They can't do anything. They can't even hardly hold a gun.
It's simply to just soak up Ukrainian ammo. That's really the goal at this point. So that's all they're really used for.
Все, пизда.
Повели пацаны с костылями оружие.
Да, я нахуй сниму. Обратно приду тоже сними.
Броники получаешь, ебать.
Просто в ахуе.
Man, some of those guys are on 2 crutches. Like, they can't even, like, walk without their hands being free at all.
Yeah, it's insane.
О, старый, я, бля, старый жалко, пизда. Подожди. Не, ну это пиздец, ёпта, что прикалывается? Ёпта.
Конченый, ёбаный в рот. Вот люди, да, заключил контракт, вроде все нормально, служил, да. В бой 5 раз выходил, 2 ранения, сильных. И травма головного мозга сильная. Психушку признал В, без оружия. Сейчас мне вешают оружие и везут на передок. Без всяких проблем у них вот так совершают. 20-я армия охуительная, вот такая. Всех
да, старый, ты прав, ёпта. Эпилепсия, вон, их нельзя вывозить, ёпта. После многих ВЗ, блядь.
Damn, bro's got epilepsy and you send him into battle with his like flashes and loud bangs. that's really something else.
Yeah, it's just crazy, honestly. It's absolutely insane.
Вот, блин, Г-30 провожу.
30 дней отпуск, сейчас поедет на передок.
Первый Г-15 я проводил тоже на передке, ёпта. Куда нахуй, ёпта, блядь. Хочешь, чтобы зажимо все, так вот нахуй вам кроссовок нахуй могу подарить. Вперед нахуй.
Подписан Грек, автомат ты подписан.
Я не подписываю свое оружие.
Это пиздец, это просто пиздец.
But as you can see, they are actually using wounded as fighting soldiers at this point. Once again, showing the desperations of Russian manpower shortages. We were also able to see them hitting some Russian forces, but nevertheless, that post was removed. So unfortunately, we will not be able to show that on tonight's stream. However, moving on down to the Zaporizhia front, we were able to see a Gammon radar being destroyed. I don't know what's up with the Hot Ones intro at the start. I have no clue. But we were able to see here the Russian raiders, and another comedy sketch being used. This is laden with comedy and humor, almost like our show. We can now see them showing an accordion and talking a great deal about what they're about to be hitting the Gammon radar. And he's saying now they're actually about to get to the video where they hit it, and we can see them here once again, showing you a little bit of the Gammon radar. We can now see it there on the front lines actually being used.
That was weird, Al.
That was weird. Oh, and look, now it's Homelander from The Boys. They're throwing in a lot of comedy here.
Man, they need to chill out. Just getting a little too carried away. I can't even focus on the main thing.
Man, and now they're cutting again. We can see the Gammon radar right there. We can also see an automobile of the occupier, according to that subtitle right there. And we can see them targeting both of them. And we see they keep on mentioning the Gammon radar.
Somebody said in the chat right here, they said, to be honest, they're probably just making excuses to get out of it. I don't think they're making excuses, man. Those guys were on crutches. Maybe the guy was saying he had epilepsy. Maybe that he was making that up. But clearly the guys with like the cast and the crutches, and also the doctor saying they can't go into battle and hold a gun. They can't be making that up. Like if they were making it up, the commanders would simply kick the crutches away and just say, suck it up and walk. But they're not.
You know, Matthew, I gotta be honest with you. It's just so convincing how much they're faking it. I mean, they made like these really convincing looking medical grade crutches and everything, out of steel. I mean, they had to have a lot of free time on their hands at that point. Really crazy stuff. I mean, there's a lot of crutches just sitting out there on the front lines. I heard you can go and pluck them off the vine. But moving on from that and into Robotnik, we did get to see a Russian surrender to a bot today, a literal bot, a Ukrainian bot, nonetheless. And there's the Russian. He's walking out.
Walking out of a grand piano, it looks like.
Man, he's about to play Claire de Lune up in there.
Oh, look. Please, please.
He's now rolling. See, he stopped, dropped, and rolled. He's now getting up. He's putting out a timeout symbol.
Yo, chat. Timeout, chat. Hold up, chat.
Aw, man. Timeout, chat. I'm losing another 300 subs. Aw, man.
This guy's making it extra clear. He said, I'm finished. I'm through. Please time out. Please
Matthew, that last video of the combat wounded, you better not show that to that one guy who goes, whoa, look at that boiler. Because you know what he would be saying? Look at them. They're getting so soft these days. What next? They're going to let the dead get off the front line? This is ridiculous. Something like that.
Yo, I remember back in my day, they didn't have these little pansies. Yeah. They'd send them out if they were even like bleeding blood. They would send them out into battle and, put them out there with the wolves. I mean, these people are just getting soft like Twinkies these days. I mean, you know what I mean?
Death wasn't even an excuse back in my day. They'd send you right back or something like that. I had to go to school and walk 5 miles uphill both ways, kind of a deal.
A DI would come in and smoke these guys. I mean, put them through the ringer. The good old sandbox routine.
I mean, the Russian army, it's really fallen these days. I mean, the standard's just not there. I'm really scared for these kids these days. I mean, they just don't get it right. There's no one going around and beating them with butter socks anymore. It's just real sad times. Something like that to say. I was like, all right. But anyways, we also got to hear that little oil spill that happened a little while ago. It's going to take 20 years to clean up. Yeah, just not that big of a deal. And the Russians are, of course, downplaying it. But still, hey, at least we know that the Russians are at least able to make some money somewhere, or not really anymore. But anyways, moving on from that and on up into Kyiv, we were able to hear that Ukraine is soon to draft 18 to 25-year-olds. That might be happening here within the near future. And also, we were also able to hear the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1066 of the war. And once again, it's another long-lasting speech. And so without further ado, here's the speech. Speech!
Дорогі українці, українки, головне за цей день, ніч і ранок сьогодні, рятувальні операції після удару російських дронів. Загалом було більш ніж 50 безпілотників різних типів і значну частину з них вдалося збити, але було і кілька влучань. На жаль, люди загинули, мої співчуття. Ці влучання шахедів будинки, Броварах та Углевасі – це дрони, які вироблені вже в Росії. Спочатку Іран передавав Росії готові шахеди, Потім їхнє власне виробництво було освоєно у Татарстані в одній з національних територій, яку Москва досі контролює. І хоча ці шахеди фактично російські, їх там все одно не змогли би зробити без іноземного постачання. Кожен такий шахед, як і кожна російська ракета, робиться на основі іноземних компонентів, критичних компонентів, без яких взагалі був би неможливим російський терор. 31 шахед за минулу ніч – це приблизно 2635 компонентів з інших країн. Мікросхеми, перемикачі, трансивери, все постачання будь-яких компонентів для терору в Росії має бути перекрито, щоб був зупинений цей терор. І це стосується не тільки захисту життя в Україні. Зараз російські шахеди б'ють по будинках наших людей, по нашій інфраструктурі. Але в будь-який момент росіяни можуть перенести терор в будь-яку іншу країну, куди їм накажуть. І зараз різні країни вже бачать на своїй території інциденти з дронами. Також всі у світі вже побачили, наскільки війна змінюється через дрони. Потрібно свідомо, принципово позбавляти такі режими, як російський, таких терористичних можливостей. І абсолютно всі, хто допомагає Росії будувати терористичний потенціал, обходити санкції, будувати виробництво зброї, усі вони повинні відповідати. І сьогодні я хочу також подякувати всім нашим воїнам, які забезпечують відповідальність Росії, справедливість для нас в Україні, воїнам, які завдають далекобійних ударів по російській території, по військових об'єктах. Наша армія, сили спеціальних операцій, спеціальні служби, Служба безпеки України, Служба зовнішньої розвідки, ГУР, всі, хто задіяний заради української далекобійності. Я дякую вам. І я хочу окремо відзначити усіх наших працівників, наших працівниць, Служби зовнішньої розвідки України, всіх, хто сумлінно служить заради виконання завдань СЗР. Сьогодні день нашої зовнішньої розвідки. Відзначив нагородами наших розвідників. Я подякував їм за службу. Будемо тільки розвивати спроможності нашої розвідки. І ще одне. Провів сьогодні ставку, кілька питань. Доповідь якраз керівника СЗР щодо військового потенціалу Росії та готовності Путіна продовжувати війну та маніпулювати лідерами світу. І, зокрема, він хоче маніпулювати прагненням президента Сполучених Штатів Америки досягти миру. Я впевнений, що жодні російські маніпуляції більше не вдадуться. І друге питання сьогодні на ставці – забезпечення всіх наших підрозділів на передовій. Це зброя, це люди. Я дякую всім в державі, хто підходить до цього питання відповідально. Слава Україні!
And Slava. And with that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1066 of the news of the war in Ukraine and the news of the from really around the world and all the wars that have been going on around the world in recent times. But also another thing I want to point out is that today is 1066 of the war. And in the year 1066, a major event would happen at the Battle of Hastings in England that would usher in a new age for largely Britain and a lot of countries that were affected by Britain over about the next century. Well, actually the next millennium, actually, interestingly enough. But beyond that, I hope that was a little shout out to the interesting day number that we're seeing right here. But with that, it's time for us to move on to the second part of this stream, where we get to talk to all of y'all. And there's a lot to be said. There's a lot to talk about. Loads to talk about, as a matter of fact. And I would have to say that it certainly will be a fun and interesting segment. As a matter of fact, Matthew appears to have brought up a question to all of y'all that it seems like something that he wanted to ask y'all. I personally didn't think we were going to cover this tonight, but Matthew has asked y'all about it, and it looks as though many people are giving answers that are interesting for sure. But Matthew, what are people talking about this, and what are people saying about it?
All right, so moving on to our last question segment of the night. And first of all, I want to say this. Thank you to everybody in the chat for keeping the chat politically neutral on this one, because of course there are some political things to this that we obviously do not cover, but I really do appreciate it. Everybody has generally stayed away from politics on this one, and I really do appreciate it a lot. But the question says, reports say that the U.S. is firm in its plan to forcefully acquire Greenland from Denmark, and what are your thoughts? 52% said the U.S. will not carry that out, while 20% said the U.S. will acquire Greenland, and 18% said, we'll probably just expand cooperation, and that'll be the end of it. And one thing, I'm currently doing research on Greenland, by the way, for an upcoming video that should be released in about a week or two, maybe. I'll say what?
Man, I went home because we're cooking up again. We're cooking.
Oh yeah, we're cooking, man. We are cooking right now. But Greenland is extremely strategically important to the U.S. But we don't have to necessarily control Greenland in order to use it, because we currently have the Thule Air Base up toward the north part of Greenland, and we also have some other bases there as well. So we're already utilizing it. The U.S. is for a strategic value, but apparently we feel the need to actually acquire it or take it, I guess you could say, kind of by force. So it looks like, of course, 51% of the people said that we're not going to take it, and only 20% said that we will take it. I'm not really sure what's up with this. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I'm really not sure what is the need to acquire the land, because like I said, we're already using it for the purpose that we need it. So I don't really understand this. Personally, I think we ought to let the Danes, keep control of it. It's their territory, and it's been that way for quite some time. So I would say just leave it as is. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I generally believe that the U.S. will not carry it out because I believe that there will be a strong opposition to that in the Congress. It wouldn't make much sense, especially on a diplomatic level. We would be creating a significant major diplomatic rift with Denmark, and not only that, maybe the remainder of the entirety of the sphere doing something like that. And also, secondly, the justifications for it do not really make a lot of sense. Now, I'll be honest with y'all, I actually have heard justifications that seem to be somewhat reasonable for reclaiming the Panama Canal. And there's been some things that have been brought up, and I'm the one who's having to work on that video, and I actually can see the argument as to why the Panama Canal should be retaken, because looking into it a little bit more, there does seem to be a large and significant influence that's currently being exerted by Chinese investment projects in Panama that could possibly start to sway the Panamanian government towards the Chinese direction, which under Operation Just Cause in 1989, where we invaded Panama and actually deposed their leader, we generally used the same justifications back then to do the same thing that's being discussed right now. So there are some equal justifications on both sides there, where you can really see both sides to where we shouldn't retake the canal and where we should retake the canal. However, with Greenland, there really is no reason to do that. The United States of America is on good terms with Denmark and actually is a part of a military defensive alliance called NATO that is currently in existence right now. There has been statements that have been made by the President of the United States claiming that the Danes simply cannot maintain Greenland, which seems a little bit odd to me because it's not really like there's a lot up there to maintain. And there's less than 40,000 people who live there permanently. Those people kind of take care of themselves for the large part. And not only that, the rest of it is pretty much uncharted and largely abandoned wilderness like any other area of the world. It doesn't really take a lot of money or maintenance to be able to keep that up. It's just a part of nature. It kind of does that itself. Another thing is that a statement was made that Denmark simply could not defend it because Russian ships are skittering all around, and that doesn't really make a lot of sense because Greenland is a part of NATO. This is a territory of Denmark, and Denmark is a part of NATO. So if the Russians ever try to invade Greenland, it's not really like our hands are tied. They just invaded a NATO country, and that activates Article 5. It would be the same thing if they invaded Greenland and the United States controlled it. Also, another thing is that we already get all of the uses out of Greenland that we could ever foresee. We already have the major U.S. military base at Thule in the area right now, along with several other bases that conduct vital operations in the form of U.S. national security interests that are in Greenland right now. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to do something like that because we're not gaining an inherent benefit out of actually acquiring Greenland as a U.S. overseas territory that we're not already getting right now through it being a Danish-controlled territory. So for those reasons, I generally would say that it does not make a lot of sense to try and annex Greenland and turn it into a U.S. overseas territory, because there's simply no value inherent in that the United States would gain. I'm not speaking about it from a point of violating the sovereignty of Denmark and their territory of Greenland. We're not even speaking about it that. We're speaking about the actual inherent value that would come out of a U.S. action like that, and there really is none. If there was any, it's marginal or non-existent. And at that point, why are we justifying a U.S. military operation that could sour diplomatic relations with the entirety of our sphere of influence that would not see us gain any inherent value out of it? And that's kind of the issue. And that's kind of the one where I go, that one doesn't really make too much sense. Now, I do have to say this on the other hand, because I would like to be a little bit fair and balanced here. Initially, I wasn't really in the camp of the United States retaking the Panama Canal when I started to initially hear that, because we ceded that to them by treaty in 1977, and then it was handed over to them in 1999 under a treaty. However, there has been changes recently in Panama that may justify retaking the Panama Canal for strategic interests. To share this with you all, something interesting here, considering that I want to be a little bit balanced here, because I don't want people thinking, oh, now he's anti everything that the president's saying, because some of it actually does have a bit of grounding, at least in a different scenario, in some strategic fact. The Panama Canal is a major artery, not really for global trade, although it actually is, but it's more so specifically a major artery for U.S. trade. 40% of all U.S. Container traffic travels through the Panama Canal, which is a shocking number. That's incredibly high. So so to put this out there for y'all, 60% of U.S. container traffic, which are the shipping containers, and let me go find some for y'all. Just, everyone knows what a shipping container looks like, but I want to make sure to show one to y'all, just so that we all know. Let me see, hang on. Now, we don't want to buy one, we just want to show y'all one. Here we go. So these shipping containers, the universal ones that are used all around the world, these shipping containers are a very important part of the United States modern economy, and really the global economy as a whole. As far as we are concerned, this is one of the most important parts of the economy, and this is also one of the most rapidly expanding parts of the economy as well in terms of transport, is the shipping container boxes. A lot of these are transported by rail, by well cars, which makes up a large amount of railroad traffic in the present day and is increasing by several percentage points annually, but 60% of them are transported by rail over land throughout the United States out of all the container traffic in the country. The other 40% is transported by ship, and that entire 40% has a choke point at the Panama Canal, because if it's ever being transported from coast to coast, the containers are loaded here on the East Coast and then transported down through the Panama Canal and then to the West Coast. So with that in mind, the Panama Canal serves to be a significant artery of U.S. trade, and not only that, it is a significant strategic corridor as well for the U.S. Navy. In the advent of a war with China, it is highly likely that the United States Navy would have to surge force and reprioritize specific operations compared to any other operations around the world. And taking the long trip around South America, which could add about 2 weeks to the U.S. Navy's response time for our East Coast fleets and squadrons, could give us a strategic death blow in the Pacific if the Chinese were to begin a war with Taiwan. For this reason, the open control of the Panama Canal is very significant for U.S. military operations going into the foreseeable future. And considering that the People's Republic of China is actively investing a large amount into Panama, this may be shifting the Panamanian government to start having larger ties with the People's Republic of China. And it could be the case that if that war was to break out, the Panamanians may violate the current treaty that they have with the United States, which gives U.S. military warships and also U.S. vessels the right of way to access the Panama Canal, and that not only could jeopardize economic interests inside the United States, but it could also jeopardize strategic interests inside the United States as well. So we're generally presented with two options there. We can either force the Panamanians into maintaining the treaty in some way, shape, or form. Well, actually, there's three options. We can invest into Panama more than the Chinese, so that way we continue to keep Panama within our favor, or we can conduct some form of diplomatic or military action to reinforce the Panama Canal zone and bring the Panama Canal back under U.S. control like it was up until 1999. Those are really the three options that we have at this point with the Panama Canal, and so we have to take one of those three at this point if we want to maintain our strategic and economic interests that the Panama Canal is so vital to maintaining.
Also, by the way, this is a fun fact that probably a lot of people didn't know. If you want to pass through the Panama Canal, before you get out of the canal, you actually have to pass through the colon. Did you know that?
Yes, I did. It's the city up here. Like
Yeah, you have to pass through the large colon down here to get out of the Panama Canal. So it's just an interesting fact.
Yeah, it's an interesting fact. And also, you know something else I found out, Matthew? I did not know this. Lake Alajuela and Gatun Lake are both fake. They're not real.
Really?
Yeah, they were both dammed up by, I believe it was the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and this is the dam right here that holds back the entire Gatun Lake.
Interesting. Also, did you get my joke earlier, by the way? I see the chat getting it. I don't think you laughed. You didn't react to it, man.
Oh, no, I got it. I just didn't laugh.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, anyway, since we're on depression, you want to know an interesting fact about Greenland? Greenland has one of the highest depression rates in the world. I think it's the third highest, and it's also, unfortunately, it's number one in a stat that I can't even say on YouTube. And I think y'all might know where I'm sort of going with that. So my thing is this: let's don't cause any more depression in Greenland by trying to forcefully take the land, especially from the Danes. It sounds like the Greenland people do not want to be taken over by the United States. They want to remain, of course, with Denmark. So, let's don't add to their depression. Let's let them be free,
I would say so. Also, someone said, I thought this channel was about Western interests. Yeah, it is. That's why I'm saying there might actually be a reason for the U.S. to retake the Panama Canal and keep it under U.S. control. But with Greenland, there's no inherent value to be had there. Because unlike Panama, where the situation is somewhat changing at the moment due to heavy Chinese investment, and the Panamanians may be really more so reliant on the Chinese than the U.S., this actually does pose a major strategic risk and could be a change that could justify drastic U.S. actions. But with Greenland, however, it's not necessarily like the Danes are really considering becoming friends with the Russians. That's a totally different perspective. And on top of that, there's no gain to annexing Greenland that could even be assessed at all. It's not like there's any massive mineral deposits in Greenland that would be easily accessible or create any kind of economic output for the United States that we already do not have. And not only that, if there was, I believe the Danes would mostly be the ones trying to invest in those opportunities, not the United States. So there really is no inherent value beyond the strategic value, which we're already getting with Denmark controlling Greenland as a territory. So it doesn't really make much sense for the United States to control Greenland, because inherently we are putting in a lot of military expenditure and action to really gain nothing out of it. Not only speaking about the major diplomatic fallout that may occur in the Western Sphere if we were to conduct a hostile action onto a fellow ally inside of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. For those reasons, it doesn't really make that much sense. But the Panama Canal side of things, it makes a bit more sense. And also, let's see here. I see some people talking about different things. Let's see. The canal and the canal and Cologne is already free for U.S. government travel. That's by treaty. The treaty can be rescinded. That's something that is important to note, is that just because something is on paper right now doesn't mean that that cannot be rescinded later. And once again, it doesn't really matter in the long term. The U.S. could always just, invade Panama whenever that happened and reopen the canal by force. But the problem with that is that if they're aligned with the Chinese, they could revoke that treaty and bar U.S. maritime access to the canal as soon as a war broke out. Not only are they heavily damaging U.S. maritime trade and greatly lengthening the supply route to where Chinese attack submarines would have a far more opportune time targeting and destroying American merchant ships, but also they would be completely stopping U.S. Atlantic squadrons and fleets from being able to rapidly transit across the Panama Canal and directly into the Pacific in a moment of wartime. So for that reason, that's why this is of a serious security concern, and that's why there may be a legitimate reason for the United States to reclaim the Panama Canal. Once again, another thing that I do have to point out that is a little interesting is that the Panama Canal is not a Panamanian creation. And another thing that's interesting, I actually did not know this until I started researching the video. Panama itself is an American creation. We actually largely forced Panama to declare independence from Colombia back in 1903. Panama did not exist before that. Panama was actually a province of Colombia before 1903, but Theodore Roosevelt went down there, largely violating the sovereignty of Colombia, if you want to put it that way, sent the Pacific Squadron and the Atlantic Squadrons to literally just hover around Panama City and Colon. We disembarked elements of the U.S. Army onto the mainland of Panama, and under that auspice, the Panamanians declared independence just the next day on November 3rd, declaring independence from Colombia, and Colombia, being unable to face down the combined might of the U.S. Army and Navy, simply digressed and allowed Panama to maintain its independence. So that's why Panama even exists. And as soon as Panama existed, on, I believe it was November 13th, only 10 days after they declared independence, the treaty was signed that ceded the Panama Canal Zone to the United States of America, which existed on a line that exists directly through the middle of the canal and 5 miles outwards in both directions. You can still clearly see that to this day, because the forest cover extends about 5 miles east and west of both sides of the canal. That is the canal zone. The United States...
Also, I'm not sure if you covered this or not, because I was typing a moment ago. I wasn't able to hear the whole thing, but did you mention that the ports at both ends apparently are controlled by a Hong Kong-based company?
Yes, I did mention that, and that's part of the heavy investments. And also, the People's Republic of China is also just investing heavily in public infrastructure projects in Panama City, which, I have to remind everyone, is the way that the Chinese create debt slaves out of countries that are pretty much forced to do the Chinese bidding whenever they need to. And that's what's starting to become a little bit concerning here. I generally...
Oh, yeah.
And
Honestly, that's very concerning.
It's incredibly concerning. And what's even more concerning is that 40% of U.S. container traffic goes through the Panama Canal through the course of an entire year. So this is quite literally a major beating heart of an artery for U.S. trade. Just even domestically, this is a major artery. So having this under a country that could become a debt slave and controlled by the Chinese in the future, and having them directly control it, is a major economic and security concern for both the U.S. military and also the U.S. economy as a whole. So I actually can see the arguments as to why we would want to see the Panama Canal Zone reinforced and brought back under American control. That actually would make a decent amount of strategic sense, and there would be an inherent value in undertaking this kind of an operation in support of U.S. and Western interests. Unlike the Greenland situation, where I really do not see any kind of interest or inherent value inside of it. Another thing that I also want to point out is that there's been a noticed drop in the amount of water in Gatun Lake, as well as Lake Alajuela, because of a lack of rainwater. But another thing that I did not know is that in the earlier part of the late 2000s and early 2010s, the Panamanians actually expanded the canal. This is the original canal over here, by the way, Matthew. This one, the double-sided locks, as you see right here. This is the new Super Panamax canals that were built by the Panamanians in the late 2000s and the early 2010s on both sides. The Panamanians now use both of these locks daily. Originally, it was only this lock. Now they have both of them working 24/7. And now they're saying, after several years, that there is a noticeable drop in the amount of water available, fresh water available in Gatun Lake and Lake Alajuela to be able to use the canal crossings. And while that also is heavily contributed due to a lack of rainwater, I think it's also due to the heavy usage of the Super Panamax canals, which may also be draining Lake Alajuela and the Gatun Lake more significantly than in the past, when we were just simply using the Gatun locks for the Panamax-sized vessels. So that may also...
I think the allegation is that they're not maintaining it properly, and they're also not running it right. I think that's the allegation being lobbed around, and also, once again, the China threat is being cited as well. And I will admit, with a Hong Kong-based company apparently controlling the ports here, or the entrances to the Panama Canal, that would be a bit of a concern, because, like you said, they could just shut it off if they chose to in the event of a war or something like that breaking out, or they decided to hurt the United States quite badly. So, yeah, I mean, I don't understand why they would let a Hong Kong-based company operate it like that. It seems a little bit weird.
But the concept of it being mismanaged, that's largely a myth. That's the allegation being thrown around, but it's a myth, because the Panama Canal is the largest money-making engine economically in Panama. So mismanaging that wouldn't make a lot of sense, because that's literally Panama's bread and butter. And from what I understand, based off of the reports that I was reading today, the Panama Canal is managed pretty much as good as it was under the United States by the Panamanian Canal Authority, controlled by the government of Panama. So it's not like the management is not worse. The real fact of the matter is that it's a major strategic and economic concern for the Panama Canal to be under the control of a country that could be compromised here within a very short amount of time by the People's Republic of China. And if
Yeah, I
that
would say
is
if they can let China control it, then the U.S. ought to be allowed to control it then, because if they're willing to outsource the control of it to a Hong Kong-based company, and once again, Hong Kong is basically like Chinese control at this point, and it's a special administrative district.
yes, it's a special
Yeah.
administrative region, an SAR.
Yes. Yeah, so that means China has complete control over Hong Kong, which means the CCP is lurking around. So when a Hong Kong-based company goes over here, you know what that means. I see some news articles saying, "Oh, that doesn't really mean that China controls it." I mean, if you want to get in semantics, I guess not. But in reality, it's like China really does control it, since it's a company based in that administrative region.
Yeah, I would say that it really does have a lot to do with a load of things, and also another thing is, in at the end of not really at the end of the day, but at the end of the argument, this is another somewhat important concern. Several thousand American workers died building this canal. And at the time that this canal project was undertaken, it was the largest government project. It was actually the largest mega project undertaken in world history by the United States. The French failed where America succeeded, because I also forgot to mention that the French, actually Ferdinand de Lesseps, who is the guy who actually built the Suez Canal, which is famous around the world for being the largest passable canal in the entirety of the world, was the one who also built, tried to build the Panama Canal. And his French backers gave him loads of money because he succeeded in making a major financial success out of the Suez Canal and building it in the first place to go to Panama and build the Panama Canal. And years after he started, 20,000 French workers lay dead from malaria and yellow fever, and he went bankrupt because they were not able to build the canal. So the United States then came down here, and from 1904 to 1914, over the next 10 years, around, I believe it was 4,000 Americans would die building the Panama Canal, and around, in modern day figures, I believe it was around $16 billion were spent to dig out the giant ditch and to dam the rivers that would form what the Panama Canal is today. So in a sense, if there was really any claim to it, it is American, because it was funded, built, and American lives were spent to build this canal and to control this zone for about the next century beyond. So I
That
was
was stupid to give it up, honestly. Like, I know there's a justification for why we gave it up, but that was stupid.
I mean, like, I would be honest, I don't really get the Greenland thing. I honestly would be opposed to it. If I was in the Congress, y'all would see I would be a pretty big person against that. But on the flip side, I think I'd honestly be on the side that the Panama Canal being retaken by the United States may be a prudent and necessary strategic measure moving on into the future, in my opinion. But still, different scenarios, different cases, and we have to look at them in different ways. What brings us value, what does not, and what kind of a necessary strategic and economic situation would necessitate such an emergency action as taking offensive measures when we generally like to work on the defensive. This would be one of the few times that I could say that, considering the stranglehold this has on U.S. naval deployments as well as U.S. economic measures, that this would be somewhat of a prudent measure to take. One of the few times I would say that would be the case. But
And
anyways,
also, by the way, I see people saying that maybe the U.S. wants Greenland for minerals, and it is true. Greenland has a lot of valuable minerals in their territory under the ice. That is true. I don't think that's the reason for actually wanting to acquire Greenland. And I use the word acquire kind of loosely there, because it's more like take Greenland is really what it's really about.
annex
But
it more
I
so.
don't, say what?
Annex it, really.
Yeah, basically annex it. But no, I don't think we're going in there for the minerals. I would say that it would solely be a military objective by simply having control over it for the U.S. control. But I don't think we'd be going in there for the minerals. By the way, what are the most populous minerals there in Greenland? Do we know?
Unfortunately, I wouldn't know. But
Let's see.
considering that there's an ice sheet that covers the entirety of Greenland, the economics of trying to build stable platforms to be able to access those minerals under those ice sheets would be pretty arduous. I don't believe that those would ever be economically viable.
Interesting. So let's see here. I was trying to look and see what the minerals were that people were talking about, because a lot of people are saying, "Oh, minerals." Let's see here. They're not really saying what the minerals are right off the bat. It does say that they have enormous reserves of oil and natural gas. And y'all know when oil pops up, the American eagle screeches. Let's see here. Let's see. Since the 1970s, oil and gas companies have tried to find ancient reservoirs off the coast of Greenland, but their attempts turned up empty. But they're saying, according to scientists, they estimate there are enormous reserves there. It's just a matter of finding them. But I'm really interested in the minerals, though. Let's see here. This BBC article right here doesn't really have the answers straight up. So let's go down here and see. Okay, so here we go. It says valuable minerals, rare earth metals, precious stones, coal, graphite, and uranium. Apparently has a good amount of uranium there as well. So let's go click on that and see what the number is on that if they have it. Let's see here. They mentioned the oil and gas again. Okay, there's uranium. It says the uranium consists of, so actually they don't know how much uranium's there, but they estimate it's a good amount. It's sort of like the same situation with the oil and gas. They don't know exactly what the real amount is, but the scientists predict that there's a lot of uranium there, which would be a very valuable mineral for any nuclear developed country or any country that's trying to become nuclear. That would be very important. So there you go. That's the answer.
But generally looking at this, considering that the average thickness of this ice sheet is around a mile thick, that would be completely unviable to try and get through that, because you would have to build structures on top of the ice. There's no way to actually build proper foundations that would last, because then they're going to start melting through the ice, so the buildings just start sinking into the ice below, and there's really no way to combat that. Like, you can't build supports or anything. So that would be an issue. And then the second thing that would be an issue is that to even access these minerals, you have to drill a 1 mile deep shaft to even make it to the surface of Greenland through the ice. So none of that would be economically profitable, because it's not like you're drilling and you're already making any form of income. And also you would have to drill far enough down, especially for all of those items beyond, natural gas and oil. You would have to drill a human-sized shaft and a larger shaft than that to be able to move down machinery to be able to mine anything there. So I would just generally say that mostly this would not be economically viable. In fact, I don't even know of any oil or natural gas rigs that have had to drill through a mile of ice and then have a permanent structure on the surface to be able to pump out the oil or natural gas. It just seems to me, and once again, if this was the case, that it was an actual kind of a viable thing, why in the world would the Danes have not invested in this, or why in the world would have American companies not invested into trying to access these minerals while it was a Danish territory? There's no resources to really be had there.
Well, while it may be hard to get to, like, for example, the minerals because of the permafrost and the ice sheets and things like that, it looks like, I'm looking at the uranium, that's the thing that really caught my attention, is the minerals available in Greenland, according to the scientists, that is. But it looks like the world's major producers of uranium include Australia, Canada, Kazakhstan, Namibia, as well as Uzbekistan, China, France, and the Netherlands. So the U.S. really does not have a direct supply of uranium that they can get their hands on, according to this. It looks like the U.S. imports most of its uranium, and then it enriches the uranium. So we would need, in the U.S.'s view, to maybe have a direct source of that, and maybe that's some justification for needing to get Greenland, is that we want to have direct access to those deposits without having to rely on a country to import those from. Maybe that's it. But even at that, honestly, why not just sign an agreement to get some from Greenland? It's not like they're controlled by an enemy country. It's Denmark. Denmark's our friend.
Yeah, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. None of it really makes sense with the whole Greenland side of things. And also, Octavian just said the same thing I'm saying. There's already a U.S. military presence in Greenland, and someone earlier said, well, we could set up like a nuclear relay sensor in Greenland to see the nukes coming over the North Pole. We already have them there. That's what Tool is for, along with many other things. So it's like, what is the point? We already get all of the strategic value we could ever want out of Greenland. It's not like, annexing Greenland and turning it into an overseas territory is going to allow us to expand our presence. Our presence has been expanded to what we can actually practically have up there and use of Greenland. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to annex it, because it's not like there's additional things that we want to do up there. So I would be entirely honest, it just doesn't make any sense to try and annex Greenland. Also, I've heard that the Secretary of State said that was a preposterous idea already. I don't know if you've heard that, Matthew, but I heard that. And then I also heard
I haven't heard that.
The Secretary of State said that was just bogus. And then he said that taking the Panama Canal, though, is a pretty serious one. So it seems like the Secretary of State's more in line with what I was saying about Greenland's pointless, but the Panama Canal actually does have significance, instead of saying both of them have significance. Because the Greenland side of things, I just don't even get. I just don't understand that.
Well, one thing I've been thinking is, you know how the United States is obviously not connected to Alaska. It's not, directly connected. There's Canada in between it. Honestly, if something broke out between us and Russia attacked Alaska, we would need to build like a super highway through Canada to be able to get up to Alaska to defend it. We should just take Canada to make sure we can have a roadway to get up to Alaska real quick. 'Cause that's like a national security thing.
Man, you're joking, right?
Yes, I'm joking.
Yeah, I was about to be like, man, there's no way you're not joking. I was like, no way.
I say build a super highway straight through Banff and have elk on the sides of the roads. That way when the tanks come rolling through, they can look at it.
I was looking at a unicorn or something like that. It's like, like in Banff. But still, I would say the whole Greenland thing is preposterous at best. The Panama thing actually has some real significance behind it. The Greenland thing, nah, not really. I don't really get it. But anyways, with that, I hope we beat that into the ground because we've been talking about that for I think about 30 minutes or so. But still, it is time for us to move on into the questions because I don't believe we've gotten to a single question yet. And we were just talking about also, by the way, folks, some people are probably wondering, what do you think about taking Canada? No. Like, also, by the way, the entire nation of Canada is supposed to be the 51st state. Come on. It's like, no. It's like, it's just too large of an administrative area to be one state. Like, you would have to carve that thing up. And also, on top of that, the other thing is that I don't really get the point of annexing Canada because it doesn't make any sense. Canada's an ally. It's not necessarily like it's a country that's on the fence. So that doesn't really make that much sense. Like, the only thing I could justify at this point is the United States retaking the Panama Canal Zone. But beyond that, I really cannot justify anything else. It just doesn't make any sense. The whole let's take Canada and Greenland thing. It's not like we're James K. Polk and we're trying to turn into the American Empire here. We're just trying to, make sure to protect our economic and military interests, but not really go much farther than that. We already get everything we need out of Canada through trade, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense to even put that on the table. So that would be my honest take on that. Not getting political or anything. I'm just speaking about the strategic value and the diplomatic consequences of actions like that, and it just doesn't really make any sense at all. So with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. And with that, it's time for us to get on into the question segment. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right. And also, real quick, by the way, obviously, I want to make this clear because some people are getting, one person particularly is getting all upset because they think we're serious. I don't believe in invading any allies for any fact, actually. Now, Panama, that might be a different situation because, of course, there's a lot more complexities with that. That could be a national security issue for real. But we should not be threatening to invade Greenland. We shouldn't be threatening to invade Canada, Mexico, nothing like that. It shouldn't be happening, but it is what it is. But the poll says here, should we invade Canada for funsies? 78% said no, 23% said yes. 23% wilding out, but I would say definitely not. And that was just a joke of a poll, by the way. But anyways, we are now moving on from that poll and straight into our super chat questions. And our first one here is going to go to none other than guess who? Guess who it is? It's Gunfox, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Gunfox, for that support. Now, he said, January 27th of 1967, the mission never flew. A cabin fire during a launch rehearsal test at Cape Kennedy Air Force Station, Launch Complex 34, killed all 3 crew members: command pilot Gus Grissom, senior pilot Ed White, and also pilot Roger B. Chaffee.
And I got to thank you so much for the support. And this is actually the crew of Apollo 1. All 3 of them actually died, I believe, a little bit, 10 days after this picture was taken. So it wasn't that much longer after this picture was made. A little bit crazy to think that the first Apollo mission that we ever conducted ended up killing everyone on the pad before the rocket was even able to do anything. But beyond that, I got to say, a very interesting point in space travel history. And I got to thank you so much for the support, Gunfox61. And also, Gunfox, I hate to say this, but I do want to point this out. You probably know that you probably saw last night that I don't really know a lot about space history, and sadly I really do not know a great deal. I know some of the big achievements, like the Russian missions to Venus, the U.S. Missions to Mars, unmanned missions, and then the manned missions to the moon and such things, but I don't really know a lot about space travel history. So most of what I'm going off of is the little bit I know, because this is one of the few historical areas where I don't know a great deal, because I generally focus a lot more on transport on the terrestrial level, aircraft, trains, cars, and ships and such things, than space. But still, I do know this one. And this was such an unfortunate incident. I do believe, if I'm correct, Gunfox, that the atmosphere inside the capsule was 100% oxygen, which is what led to the fire going completely out of control and killing everyone too quickly for anyone to react. And I believe after this, they ended up replicating the atmospheric conditions in the capsules of Earth, which was mostly nitrogen and a very small amount of oxygen. But still, a fairly interesting incident, and probably one of the more somber ones of space travel, always showing that it's not a perfect kind of a world trying to get into space. A very dangerous one, as a matter of fact, in some cases. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to talk about such an unfortunate incident in U.S. space exploration. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and I saw Avro say in the live chat, they said there's already a highway from the U.S. to Alaska. It's the Alaska Highway, and I believe it starts in Dawson Creek. And no, not that one. I'm not really sure where Dawson Creek is, to be perfectly honest with you, but that's good. We didn't even have to invade. We already have a highway to Alaska. There you go. Look at that, diplomacy in action. But anyways, we are now moving on from that to that potential invasion, and we're moving on here to this next super chat, which goes to Gunfox once again. And thank you very much, Gunfox, for the second $20 support. He said, Gemini 6A accomplished the first space rendezvous with its sister craft, a Gemini 7, in December 1965, with Gemini 7 setting a 14-day endurance record for its flight. And take a question from the chat.
Oh, and look at this. That's actually really cool looking. This is a picture taken from one capsule of the other.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. You know, one thing that blows me away about those early capsules is that they legitimately look, man, like radiator grills that were welded together, like in just a giant, like cone shape. Really wild. But still, incredibly cool to hear that that was something that happened. Really cool to know that they actually docked with it. And let's see what it looked like. Let's see here. Dang. Let's see. Launches the target vehicle for the rendezvous mission. And it failed, apparently. But that's still a very interesting rocket. Never seen that one before, actually. But let's see here. Here's the launch aboard of Gemini 6, apparently. But still, let's see here. Man, that's wild looking, honestly. That's actually incredibly cool.
I like that gold foil on the bottom of it. It's like a nice touch.
Man, it really is that bling, man. You got to put that bling on it.
Look at that, man. Flashy, like a Ferrari.
Man, I got a Glock in my Rari. Beyond that, really, really cool.
Hey, man, they can't even have that up there, man. Come on, they can't conceal carry.
Dude, the Russians take Gats to space, man. They got like shotguns and stuff in the Soyuz. But we do not do that because that's absolutely batshit. And I don't know why people.
The Russians.
Well, the Russians
are just wild. They're wild and loose, man, with everything. Like they were wild and loose with their first guy that went to space. They're taking Gats to space. You know, it's just a free for all in the Russians, I guess. Sometimes it works out for them though, and then sometimes it goes terribly wrong.
Man, you know what's crazy is that the Russians have the shotgun because they get land in the middle of Siberia by happenstance, and then they got to fight off the bears. It's like that's like a little bit archaic, you know. It's like, you know, you literally got to climb out of your capsule. Like, you don't even have time to acclimate back to Earth's gravity. You just got to climb out of the capsule and be ready to kill. It's like, that's a little crazy, honestly. But still.
And what's worse? You can be an American and get stuck on the International Space Station and not know if you're going to get taken off of it or not. Or you could be a Russian and get landed down the Siberian wilderness and have to fight the bears for a living.
Honestly, I think it's fighting the bears. Because, like, getting stuck is a rare occurrence. Fighting the bears happens almost every time they land. Like, things like every other time they land in Siberia somewhere and they have to be recovered that way. So they have to fight off the bears. It's like, that's just kind of a little crazy. You know, when you think about it, it's like space exploration done in the Middle Ages. You just land in the wilderness. So you got to fight off the wildlife until someone can get you. It's like, that's a little crazy. But beyond that, I will say, very interesting stuff to share, Gunfox61. I got to thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I got to say, what an interesting mission. And here are the astronauts who did it. This guy right here is Thomas P. Stafford here on the left. And on the right is Walter M. Schirra Jr. He was junior, by the way, not the senior. But beyond that, pretty cool.
But it looks like Ballmer over there on the left side right there. Looks like the guy who was the CEO of Microsoft for a while, whatever that guy's name. I can't remember his first name. So I think it's Steve Ballmer. That's it. He looks like that guy.
You know, I'm not
Developers.
I'm not gonna lie, man. These two guys both look like they're in a Star Trek episode, like with how this picture was taken and everything.
The guy on the right, I'm not gonna lie, he looks like a wax figure. Like it looks like his face isn't even real.
That's kind of, man, and his hair is like perfectly like sculpted, you know, like with the
Yeah.
hair gel, like
Hollywood studios, man, they got the makeup department in full swing.
man, they got it. Also, the regime was not the Soviet Union. It was apparently a regime called Low Earth Orbit. Very interesting. Also, they were recovered by the USS Wasp. Well, the USS Wasp actually had a World War II history behind it, but it didn't look like that by this point. Let me see if I can show you all the refit. This is the refit version, so that's what it looked like when they recovered them from the waters, I'm supposing.
Interesting. Also, by the way, I was just reading this from Marion Deemer. I was blown away. I had to read it 3 times. Marion said, I worked as a flight attendant for Lufthansa in the 70s and the 80s. And for flights over the northern Arctic, we had a shotgun on board for the polar bears. I've never heard that ever. Like, that's crazy. Like, I guess it would make sense, though. I guess if you had to crash land the Arctic, if you were able to survive it, I guess it would be not that hard to survive a crash landing in the Arctic, but surviving after you crash would be a doozy. So the shotgun, I guess, would be a good help for those polar bears. To be honest, though, the size of a polar bear, those things are freaking massive. I'm not sure if the shotgun's going to do much good. That thing's still going to get you even if you shot it, I think.
Man, honestly, though, that would be great, man. You're flying Lufthansa, you crash in the Arctic, and then you hear over the intercom, like, if the plane's still intact, bling, bling. Ladies and gentlemen, if you look out the right side window, we have a large polar bear outside. Do not worry. Do not be alarmed. Currently, the flight attendants are trying to deal with that right now. And then you hear, and then you hear, like, a door opening, and they're, like, going outside to go take care of it. It's like, dude, that's service right there. You don't get that kind of service on an airline anymore.
Yeah, you hear the polar bear ding, ding, and then you see Marion cocking the 12 gauge. I'm going to take care of this.
Yeah, just, you know, like the flight attendants, the way they had them dressed back then, and you just see one of them, like, you know, it's like the flight safety briefing where they do, like, the life preserver thing, but they pull out the shotgun, like, show it to everyone, and then go, and then, like, go to open up the door, and then go out there and take care of it. Honestly, I wish flight attendants were like that these days. You would know that you're being taken care of because Lufthansa's got the gat in the back and they're going to blast away any bear that gets near the plane. Like, that truly is first-class service. You just don't get that in the deregulated airlines anymore, really.
I say if you saw a polar bear outside the plane, you had to like shotgun the polar bear or something, go ahead and drop the oxygen mask down because I'm going to start hyperventilating because that thing's like a freaking like walking tank. Have you seen that video? I think it was the BBC that put it out. It was some guy who was like walking up the ladder of some Arctic piece of equipment and a polar bear walked up to like the ladder that was see-through and stuck its snout through the ladder and looked at the guy.
Yeah.
The snout on that thing was like almost as big as the guy. It looked like it was like, what the hell? So I didn't know those things were that big. It was as big as the equipment.
Wait, you've never seen the scale of a polar bear? Like, you've never seen how big they are?
Not until I saw that video, and I was like, damn, those things are like as bigger than a car.
I'm gonna blow your mind. This is actually a thing that they have at a zoo. I don't know which one, but it actually shows the true scale of the bears. This is the black bear. This is the one that's like kind of common for our area. If we ever see a bear, Matthew, in the Appalachians and stuff, that's our bear. You know, really friendly sized, and they're also not really mean. Like, they say the black bears are actually really passive compared to other bears. But then the one behind that is the grizzly bear, which is seen over in the Rockies and kind of like the West Coast area, which is a bastard. And then you have the polar bears, which is the largest bear species in the world. They get about 10 feet tall standing on their rear legs. I mean, the things are literally tanks. Like, they're huge. They're like mooses, nearly.
And the eyes on that thing, like when that thing looked into the camera, like when they were filming it, that thing was a straight up killer right there. Like, damn, look at that. Also, by the way, that grizzly back there looked a little stupid. Did you see that last picture? We saw.
Do you know what the Laffy Taffy is? Like, it's like,
really, it's like you go from the absolute killer on the right polar bear to that goofy thing over there on the left.
Man, and the little like black bear down there, man, it looks like he's about to go, hello, you know, something like that. It's like just a little fella. It's like, oh, get the hell out of here. Like, it's like,
it makes the black bear look like it's just a little pipsqueak or something compared to that polar bear.
Man, the black bear's gonna be like, hey, I'm gonna mess you up. The polar bear's like, that thing's mine, boy. And then, like, just rips the black bear out. Like, dude, honestly though, I would be scared to ever see a polar bear. Like, I actually would be. Look at that thing. These things are terrifying.
Yeah, you know, one thing though about the polar bears is even though they're very intimidating, they're very rich. Because they got in on the ground floor of Coke really early on, and that's why you see them standing in all the pictures. They own a lot of the stock.
Dude, legitimately, they actually do. There's like this secret, there's this secret society of polar bears that controls most of the world's finances. Pull it up. Y'all will find out the esoteric knowledge people got it down. But beyond that, let me see. Oh, here's another picture. Man.
It looks like it's like imaginary playing the piano or something like that. To my, oh, me? You come over here, I'll get you some.
Man, I'm trying to. Also, why in the world is this one posting up like that? Like, why in the world is it doing that?
Man, that bear right there grew up in the streets.
Man, this one says F12 or something like that when it's walking around out there in the Arctic. Oh my god, dude, it's man, there's not really a lot of things showing the true scale of a polar bear. I'm trying to find something, you know.
Man, that bear is literally like squaring up, like it's got the stance down and everything.
Man, dude, this one says West Side Arctic Circle. You ain't messing with me, fool. Like it's just like man, it's like that is crazy. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here's all the bears and their sizes. Let's see. Oh yeah, here's
sun bear, man. That sun bear looks like a human almost, or a dog standing up.
You want to see a sun bear? Like those things are legitimately like weird looking. They look like people in suits. Let me see if I can find you a good picture. Yeah. It's like Mr. Bean wearing a bear costume.
Wait a minute. Isn't that the picture from that China zoo, though, where this actually was a guy in a suit?
No, like, these things are just legitimately, like, they look like that.
But, you know, they actually caught a guy in a China zoo actually wearing a bear suit and faking it like a bear. Like, there was actually a guy doing that for real.
It's this guy. Yeah, it was this guy. But the other one, I believe, is real. But, like, this one kind of looks like a pit bull.
Oh, well, damn, okay.
You got any children around that I can eat? Like, it's like, that thing looks like I say that. It's like, whoa, it's like, hey. But these things are interesting. Very bizarre. Like, to be, what the hell is that? Oh, that's a statue. I was about to say, those eyes look like it's on, like, crack or something. Oh,
it's like a lemur or something.
But let's see here. Oh, dude, some of these look like cracked out. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I don't really like sun bears. The sloth bear. What is this? I've never heard of the sloth bear either. Huh.
Oh my dear God. Whoa. This shouldn't even be called a bear.
Dude, I don't know what that is, but I call it an abomination to the Lord above. Like, I would honestly say, like, that is rough.
On something when they named this one.
Man, look at that.
Oh my God, look at that one right there growling or something. Look at that image right there in the center. Look at that. Click at that one.
Oh
my.
Get away from me. Dude, this thing goes, get away from me. Like it's something like that. It's like what the hell? Dude, wait, hang on. We gotta see the other ones. Spectacled bear. This one has glasses. Let's go find it. Spectacled bear. Now, this is an interesting segment. What is up with these bears? I don't like them.
These bears are tough looking. Jeez, man. This is like a badger.
Dude, this one's just chilling, though. I respect that. Also, this one's just chilling as well. I respect that. But let's see.
These are some rough-looking bears.
What is the Asian black bear? Oh, this one's cute.
Yeah, I guess you could call it cute. It's interesting.
Well, it's certainly an upgrade from everything else we've seen. Like we can put it that way. Also,
I need another picture of this one.
Let's see. It's a chunky thing.
What the hell? There's no definition to its face. It's just like its face is its body, basically.
Dude, this thing looks like it's going, hey, do you have any beans? Or something like that. It's like,
look at that one right there holding on that post, though. Do you see that? Look at that one down there.
Man, that's like that dude on that school bus that we used to go to school with.
It's hot dog, man. This is what he does when he gets like 5 views. My precious, this is my 5 views.
Man, look at this one, though.
That one looks like, honestly, the most like mature of them.
Okay, so now it's time to go on to the American black bear. The American black bear. Let's go take a look at it. These, we know, they're very cute, chunky things. Look at them. They're fat.
Honestly, the black bear looks like the most normal of all of them, actually.
Yeah, that's because that's what we know as the bear. Like, you know, because that's our bear. So that's what we grew up kind of knowing.
That's my guy.
That's my man, right there. Like that. Like, look at him. Look at him go. Look at the absolute presences. It kind of looks like a dog and a bear combined, and it's fat. These things are fat as hell.
You know, honestly, this one looks kind of sweet. I kind of want to pet it.
Man, these things actually will tear you up, like, if you mess with them too much. But they are sweet looking. I will give them that. Like, I would say probably the most approachable looking kind of a bear that there is. It just looks like a dog, kind of.
Well, I mean, it's like I'm joking. Like when I say I want to pet the bear, these things are freaking deadly as hell. But it looks like if you could look at it from like a distance, like maybe from a cage or something like that, I would like to see one, but not like up close for real without a cage.
Now it's time to move on to the grizzly bear. And it gets the name grizzly bear for a reason here in this country. But here it is. This is the bear. Like this is what everyone
Oh,
does know is the bear.
yeah, that's the grizzly there. It's actually grizzly.
Oh, and these things will tear the hell out of you. I mean, even if they just see you, they'll want to kill you. Like these things are insanely dangerous. But man, look at that one.
Man, that one. How'd they get to do that?
I don't know. I guess it just happened to do like it's like I
Paid
don't know.
actor.
But man, these bears are something. Like they truly are.
Wait, what's that stuffed one over there? You see that stuffed one on the far left? Oh my god, this thing right here. Oh jeez.
Oh
I
my
don't know what to
lord.
say.
Dude, but grizzly bears are pretty interesting. And then of course there is the last but not least on at least on that list of bears. There's a lot of other bears that weren't shown like pandas and all that kind of stuff, but the polar bear.
Oh man. Oh, that one looks friendly.
That one looks friendly enough. Let me see if I can get one that's covered
Man,
in
those
blood.
polar bear pups though. I would love one of those. Go back to the top real quick. There was a picture of one of them pups.
Oh, look at it.
Let's see. Yeah, man, I love that. Like, I would like if you could have it while I was small and then give it back. Like, that'd probably be a great thing. But even small, though, I bet these things are a menace.
Man, look at this one. This one's literally pointing at the cameraman. Like, it's like, hey, what's that over there? Like, it's like,
It really is like, hey, Mom, look over there. It's a man.
hey, Mom, they're seeing I'm a man in a little suit. Like, he's right over there. Like, dude, wait a minute, that bear's about to go, stop looking, I'm changing here. You know, it's about to start doing that. Like, oh, look, it's the, well, that's not the Coca-Cola polar bear. Oh, here it is, the Coca-Cola polar bear.
There he is.
There it
Even
is.
the polar bears are hooked on Coke and they're literally out in the middle of nowhere.
You ever seen a red panda, Matthew?
Yes, I have.
Those are those communist pandas, but they are pretty cute.
Yeah, it's like a lemur type thing, kind of.
It's kind of like a fox, honestly.
Yeah, I like those things though. That thing looks friendly.
Yeah, and then you have the great panda, because they're just simply great. And there it is. You know, a lot of people give these things a bad rap. Interestingly enough, like a lot of people give them a bad rap because they say they don't know how to reproduce. Weirdly enough, pandas do not reproduce in captivity. They only reproduce in the wild, which is a very weird thing that we did not know until recently, just about 3 years ago or so, because as you all know, pandas were going in, were becoming an endangered species in China. So, like any other species, there was a large campaign to bring them into the zoos to start breeding programs to up the numbers and remove them from being an endangered species. But what was weird is that every single time a panda was brought into captivity and they were given a mating pair, they would never successfully breed to have offspring, which is a very weird kind of a thing. But once they were released back into the wild, they would have a perfectly fine reproductive sort of a life cycle. So an incredibly weird thing about the great panda, and it's given them a bad rap in the public because a lot of people say they deserve to go to extinct because they don't even know how to breed, but it's really just something that comes about because of, I guess, the stress of living within a captive sort of a environment, which is interesting.
Well, they're literally being stared at in the zoo. But also, look at that friendly one down there waving down there. I like that one.
Man.
You see? No, there was. Oh no, man, there was one more below it. Like, go look again. There was one more. Look at that waving one.
Oh,
right
look
there,
at that
on
one.
Redbook. It's on Redbook. Look, it's the Kami app.
Look at
but
that.
It's friendly though. Look at that. I like that one.
Did you know, Matthew, that all pandas are owned by the Chinese Communist Party?
Wow. That's even the animals can't escape it.
Yeah, and also the Chinese lease them out to countries like the United States as diplomatic gifts. And so if the Chinese get on bad terms with us, they just start recalling their pandas.
Interesting. So they're like pimping out the pandas, basically.
Pretty much,
They're
yeah.
leasing them.
That's exactly what they do. It's like it's such a weird thing to do to a entire species. But the Chinese kind of treat the great panda a lot like we treat the bald eagle. Although we really don't even do the bald eagle like that because the United States doesn't claim ownership of all bald eagles. But it is a felony to shoot one. Interestingly enough, it is actually a felony to do that. But beyond that, interesting little rabbit hole, I hope, about pandas and bears and generally everything else to deal with the entire species of bears. But beyond that, I hope you all had fun with this segment. Anyways, Matthew, how many super chats do we have left? Because that rabbit hole literally ate up like 30 minutes.
So we have about 19 super chats left.
Oh, well, we're fine. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to Gunfox once again, who puts in another 20. Thank you very much, Gunfox. He said 13 of March 1989, the STS-29 Shuttle Discovery Launch, LC-39B, landed Edwards Tracking and Data Relay Satellite and deployment of IMAX camera and Space Station Heat Pipe Advanced Radiator Element, Space Station Radiator Experiment.
And that's incredibly interesting here. And look at that. It's deploying the data relay satellite right there. Pretty cool.
Oh, look at that. That is pretty cool. And also, apparently, it put the IMAX camera out there, too. That's also cool.
Let's see here. Where in the world? Here's the, let's see. Is this the one with the IMAX camera? I wouldn't know. Yeah, let's see. Here we go. An IMAX camera was used to film a variety of scenes for the 1990 IMAX film Blue Planet. Well, they don't show any scenes from it, but I bet they were pretty impressive. But let's see here. Lake Natron in Tanzania. That's a red lake. What in the world? Wait, hang on. But does that look like that now? Where in the world's Tanzania? Here we go. And where is that lake? Is this the lake? This is Lake Salonga. This is Lake Natron. So where is that lake?
Kami Lake.
Kami Lake. It is a Kami. Like, it's like, let's see. Where is Lake Natron? I can't find it. Lake Natron. Let's take a look. There it is. So it's still red. I wonder what makes it red. Must be that Chinese influence. But still interesting. I've never seen a picture of that lake before, and it's not even really a big one. So I don't know why that was like a picture emphasized. But, oh, look at that. There's the external tank after separation.
That's pretty neat. What, it fall back down to the ocean or something?
Yeah, they eventually, they have like a decaying orbit, so they eventually just burn, up in the atmosphere on re-entry. But there's the liftoff. Man, the shuttle was always so cool. I'm not gonna lie, man. Like, the coolest thing that probably ever went to space. But let's see. And then there's the launch of the satellite again. But really cool to hear that they actually put an IMAX camera onto that satellite. And we can see it after deployment right there on the satellite. Pretty cool. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, Gunfox Station, we wouldn't be able to hear interesting things about space history. You're actually teaching me a lot about space. A lot that I personally did not know. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Nova Stardust, who puts in a 20 as well. And thank you very much, Nova, for that support. And they said, have you checked out Michigan Central Station? And it was designed by the same architect as New York Central, and it was closed and abandoned in the 1980s and restored recently by the Ford Motor Company.
And let's take a look. Michigan Central Station. Ooh, I like the style. I like that. Okay,
that
so
was built recently, they said?
No. This was built back in the. Let me go see when. I would bet it was probably built in like the 1910s or the 1920s. Because it looks like style-wise, it matches. Dang, man, that is very nice. So when was this built? Nope, we wanted to know the Wikipedia. Where's the Wikipedia? Let's see. It was opened in 1914, so I was dead on the nail, the 1910s or the 1920s. So that's when it was opened. And then it was refurbished recently by the Ford Motor Company. Big shout out to the Ford Motor Company for doing that. Let's see, $90 million for redevelopment into a mixed-use facility as a cornerstone of the company's new Corktown campus. So this is a part of the Ford campus within this area. And you can actually see the building here. You can actually see what appears to be the renovation works going on around it at the time when that satellite picture was taken. And you can also see the railroad, which it would have had access to back in the day. It doesn't have access to it now. Of course, you can clearly see that, which is a great misfortune, isn't it? Like, it's just sad that that's not, an actual usable train station at this point. But let's take a look at the pictures. Man, honestly, a really nice repurposing of the space. And this is what it looked like before restoration.
Oh, wow. Ford did numbers with that one. They literally fixed it up.
Dude, look at that. Man, they really fixed this thing up well. Like, they did an incredible job at this. Let's see. This must have been the grounds before the refurbishment. You know what? I remember seeing this on a channel a while ago. Like, I think it was, like, old pictures of it and them talking about it. But I didn't really pay much attention to it then. But yeah, what an impressive building, honestly.
I wonder why Ford did that. Was it just out of, like, love for the place or something? Or was there a reason behind it or something?
I think what they did is that they bought the building and refurbished it so that it could be used as future real estate that the Ford Motor Company could make money off of leasing or selling out. I think that's what they're doing. But also, it's apparently, according to what we were seeing here, a part of their new Corktown campus. And I don't know a lot about that.
Okay, so it must be like part of something they're building with like an office complex or something. So that would make more sense.
Yeah, it does make a good bit of sense. And dang, man, look at this. Hang on, I want to make sure. Dang, man, they actually had a lot of railroad services coming here. And even before Amtrak stopped servicing the place, it was closed in 1988. So it was open for some of the earlier decades of Amtrak services. And then it was rebuilt just last year. So very interesting stuff here. Did not know about the station, but certainly one for the books. This was also the track layout that they had for the station. So if you're looking at it relative to the station now, here's where the tracks would have been. So here's the building. This is the complex. It's pretty much square from above. So this is the station. So then back here, where this entire empty area was, this was actually where all of the platforms were for the trains that would arrive and depart throughout the course of the day. You had the team yard over here. This is where all of your idling locomotives would be, because back in the era of steam, you really couldn't just turn off a locomotive and walk away from it like you would now. It had to constantly be heated and have a running fire in it that's at least small enough that it could be brought up to steam and brought into service really quickly. So that's what the team yard was for. The coach yard over here, closer to the passenger station, which is where this parking lot is right now, that actually would have been used to house all of the passenger cars when they were not being put into service, or when they were being cleaned out by the custodians, or when they were being readied for an entry back into service. So this was a multi-purpose yard, probably used by all of the companies that had access to the passenger station, because usually large stations like these were built in conjunction with all of the railroad companies that would use them. So New York Central, who else had access to this building? Baltimore and Ohio did. So Baltimore and Ohio, Canadian Pacific, the Detroit, Toledo, and Ironton Railroad, and the New York Central all had access to the coach and team yards to be able to keep their locomotives and coaches ready for service. But that was all a part of the station at one point, but now it's really been reduced just to the central station building, and all of the actual concourses, platforms, and coach and team yards are gone and do not exist anymore, and we're all ripped up. But you can still see, cool enough, you can actually see the track where they existed and where they would have entered the platforms way back when the station was still in service when it closed in 1988. You can still see their imprint in the rails right there.
Oh yeah, you can actually still see it. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Man, I just hate that train passenger train service just completely collapsed in the country like that. And even Amtrak started to size down their services, because it sure as hell would have been nice to have like these giant cathedrals of stations like Union Station in Washington D.C. across the country, and still have train service that was modern and usable. That would be very nice. But sadly, that just doesn't exist anymore. But still nice to see that they repurposed the space and kept the station alive. Big shout out to the Ford Motor Company, which also is an integral part of U.S. transportation history. But beyond that, thank you so much. Also, I wonder what the rest of Detroit's looking like these days. Because Maddie, they said that Detroit collapsed and it got down to about, I think, 300,000 people in size. I think I've heard recently that a lot of people are now starting to re-enter Detroit, like moving back in, and they're pretty much rebuilding the city in the middle of the ruins that exists of when it was about 1.3 million in size.
That would be interesting. That's a monumental task, I'd imagine, because there's a lot of crime in Detroit and things like that.
Well,
and
interesting enough, the crime's fallen a lot, actually.
Let's see a crime chart. I'm curious to see that. Do we have like a graph?
Detroit crime stats.
Because usually when the crime goes high, it's like it rarely ever comes down rapidly.
So let's see here. Well, it says that pretty much the entirety of downtown Detroit is still the most dangerous place.
There's some analytics below, by the way. I think there's a chart down here.
Oh, yeah, so it's...
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's extremely high still. And yeah, see, I told you, man, that stuff doesn't drop like that. Let's see. It's 1 in 50 is your chances of becoming a victim of a violent crime. That's horrific.
Safer than 1% of U.S. cities. So Detroit actually is still a hellhole. I actually thought that it was doing much better, because that's what I had heard. Because, like, let me show you the Detroit population figures.
Man, Detroit's almost got a negative score almost.
So this is what
Oh,
Detroit's population has done over the past decades, just the past 30 years. It went from around 1 million all the way down to 600,000. So largely a 40% decrease in size just in the past 30 years. So most of Detroit, interestingly enough, what's cool is that a lot of historians actually use Detroit as a model and kind of an example to figure out what the decay of ancient Rome would look like, because the fall of Detroit was very similar to the fall of ancient Rome in terms of size and the urban decay that occurred afterwards, after many people left the city.
well, it was the city fell. Like honestly, for real, like Detroit is having the same type of decline that Birmingham had when the major industries left here. That's the same thing happened in Detroit as well. Major industries left. Am I correct in that? It was like I think it was the motor industry was the first ones to fold there, and that's what caused it to really go under.
Well, Detroit was Motor City, so when all of those motor companies left, the city's economy, which was a monolith on the motor industry, just went under.
Yeah, and what caused it to fall like that? Was it just economic issues in the country, or was it specifically a problem in Detroit?
Well, what happened is that in the 2008 recession, due to a lot of people losing their jobs, the motor companies were not able to sell the normal amount of automobiles that they usually did, and so a lot of them started to go under. The government bailed them out, but in a cost-saving measure, they decided to pick up and move most of their automotive manufacturing companies elsewhere in the United States, well, their factories, elsewhere in America or outside the United States, outsourcing the labor to foreign countries. So that's generally what happened, and that's why Detroit started to collapse. Because another thing that I wanted to point out, because a lot of people would say, oh, they went to China. No, they didn't. Actually, a lot of them ended up moving to Alabama, crazily enough, because Detroit and the kind of arrangement that the state of Michigan had because of the long-lasting history that the city of Detroit had with the automotive industry, the labor unions were really able to iron down fairly good arrangements for the workers, but it also produced a position to where the company could move at some point and generally be able to keep itself alive and make a larger amount of profits and benefit its shareholders better if they didn't have the union arrangements that they had in the state of Michigan. So when these companies got bailed out and they were looking to save costs generally on labor, which was one of the things that they could cut down on, they looked outside of the state of Michigan and specifically out of Detroit. So that's why generally all of them moved out of Detroit and elsewhere. And that's why Alabama nowadays, in case y'all don't know, is the 5th largest automotive manufacturing state in the United States, because a lot of those companies moved down here. Alabama really doesn't have a lot of unionization in it, or union laws or union regulations for that matter, compared to, for example, Michigan, where that was a thing that grew with the culture there. And so it became a lot more profitable to come down to Alabama because you weren't having to give out all of the workers' benefits, the amount of pay that was being seen in Michigan because of the labor arrangements, and so it became more profitable for them to come down to Alabama or other states that are similar. So that's kind of a part of it. And then some of them would move to Mexico. Not really any of the automotive manufacturers moved to China because of the import regulations and everything else that pertains to building a car in China and then shipping it off to the United States. So usually they went to Mexico or they just moved somewhere else into the United States.
Yeah, it's always interesting how that goes with places like when industries collapse. Like, for example, Detroit's automotive industry collapsed and it led to widespread poverty because a lot of people were out of jobs. Then the crime skyrocketed like crazy. And then it's sort of been sitting at that point ever since. And then, of course, it's just like devastation left behind after that. And of course, a lot of people don't want to remain there. So if they can, they move. And it leaves the place desolate. And then you literally have people selling homes for $1 just trying to get the tax burden off of them. And same thing happened here in Birmingham, except it was a different industry. I believe it was the ironworking industry, wasn't it? Or some type of metalworking?
It was really the iron and steel industry. But crazily enough, we still kind of have it around. It's just not as big as it used to be.
Yeah, I mean it shrunk down a ton though, because that was like there's some really large like mega mansions in Birmingham, by the way, that the CEOs used to live in here, and of course now the CEOs don't live in them anymore, and the value sunk dramatically because the huge companies left the area, except for one of them. I think we still have that U.S. Steel plant, don't we? Is that U.S. Steel up there?
Yeah, U.S. Steel actually still has a pipe making plant here near Bessemer and Inslee, and this is the entire complex. This whole area here at Westfield, all through here, this entire thing is U.S. Steel.
Yeah, but it's to make the point though, like I was going to say, when the main industry starts shrinking down, or they either collapse, leave, or whatever, it leads to that poverty, and the crime follows really quickly after. And Birmingham is extremely dangerous, just like Detroit is extremely dangerous. So you sort of have the same thing, and then the downtown just goes to hell, and then it's like a hellhole to go into it, which is a shame because then people don't want to live in it. They flee downtown, and in Birmingham they fled to the suburbs to leave the crime and try to get away from the crime. So that's what's happened here. But Birmingham is very, very dangerous, just like Detroit.
Yeah, it really is. Like Birmingham actually is Birmingham. Well, actually, crazily enough, Birmingham is very dangerous. It's actually more dangerous than Detroit by the violent crime numbers. But Bessemer is actually the most dangerous place in the United States right now, which is largely a suburb of Birmingham, Alabama. But that's generally because, and I don't know if you know this, Matthew, but Bessemer is a part of the steel making process. Like it's an actual part of it. And so the town of Bessemer is named after that process in steel making. And when the steel makers the steel and iron makers moved out of Birmingham, the local city economy of Bessemer imploded, and that's why it's like the crime-ridden, run-down hellhole it is today. Anyone who lives in Birmingham can tell you that Bessemer is truly the worst part of the entire Birmingham area. It looks like Haiti, honestly, down there, like with how bad it is. Like you could easily see shanty shacks popping up down there, and it wouldn't be that out of vogue, really. But it's a shame, really, because the city of Birmingham used to be a very well-off city. It was the most well-off city in the state of Alabama. Nowadays, I would say that really any other city could probably beat it out, especially in the downtown areas, because it just doesn't have any real industry. I mean, some of it exists, like U.S. Steel and some of the larger cement manufacturers in North Birmingham, but it just is not to the level it used to be, and it doesn't really bring the kind of wealth into the local tax base that it used to. So, all the people who have to follow the money and have to have a good job, they move out. All the folks who are not that fortunate because they don't have that kind of money, they end up staying, and then it ends up devolving into hell because, everyone's living in squalor, they're not making any money, and they got to try and find a way to eat. Or it's just hopeless, and then people just go crazy because it's hopeless. So it's a very unfortunate thing with downtown Birmingham and Bessemer, but that's generally why it's like that these days. And someone said, "Can we get a look at downtown Bessemer?" Sure, like why not? Like might as well take a look at it. This is the downtown, and this is actually in the morning hour, so it's not as I guess it's not as rough as it would be in the middle of the day, but you can see this building was actually condemned and just torn down like a while ago. It actually was there last time I went through. But let's see here. Let me see if I can show y'all. Let's see. Somewhere around here holds the title of the most wild gun store I've ever been in. For not because of the stuff they were selling, but because of the kind of viewpoints that were being held by some of the people who ran the store. But let's see here. Let's see. I'm not really finding any good examples. Oh, look, there's the Bright Star, which is the oldest restaurant still in Alabama. The oldest continuously running one, that is. But let's see here. Actually doesn't look that rough for some reason right here. I'm not going to lie, Matthew, but if y'all go down...
Google Street View usually makes places look like crap, but for some reason it makes Bessemer look better than it does in real life.
Yeah, honestly, looking at this, you'd be like, oh, Bessemer isn't that bad. Like, it doesn't look that bad on the Google Street View, but I assure you, if you go down here, you'll be wanting to leave. It was so bad a couple of years ago to get into that Bright Star restaurant, because I talked to someone about going to it, and they're like, nah, I wouldn't go to it. The food's not really worth it. Because years ago when they went, the Bright Star restaurant actually had a hired gunman that would meet you in the parking lot and escort you into the restaurant because the crime was so bad you could get mugged just trying to get into the restaurant. So, it's a pretty rough area of the city. Doesn't look that bad, though, in Street View. But the looks are deceiving. I can assure you of that. I can promise you that one. Also, is this an intermodal yard in the middle of Bessemer? Hang on. That's not what this is, but I did not know that this was even here, Matthew. Look at that. It's like a miscellaneous goods and intermodal yard, but a very small one.
Yeah, it is. Look at that. Also, these shipping containers are like $3,000 a piece or something. You could build a house out of those.
Yeah, shipping containers are cheap. It took a lot to get them off the ground back in the 50s because the technology came about in the 50s, but now it's the thing. I didn't even know they had built a container or intermodal yard out here in Bessemer. That's actually pretty cool. But I guess it was cheap as hell to buy that land. I mean, it's cost like nothing nearly. But also, what is this? Birmingham Rail and Locomotive? There's a lot of locomotive stuff out here, man. You know what? I ought to go out here. I'm gonna get beaten up and mugged, but I'd still go out here.
Oh yeah, you're gonna get nice and pulped.
But there's a whole kind of interesting things out here. You know, you just gotta weather it out and pray for the best. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and I see that Hokey Redneck said those containers are 9mm proof. And he also, guess what? He put in a super chat. And that was our next one we were getting to. And it goes to Hokey Redneck, who puts in that $50 donation. And thank you very much, Hokey, for that support. He said, not going to talk about DC Station, but can you cover KC Station?
Kansas City? Of course we can cover the Kansas City Station. That's a pretty interesting one. It's right by the National World War I Museum and Memorial. And then right across the green, boom, Union Station at Kansas City. Actually, a pretty cool one. Sadly, once again, like many other stations, a lot of the platforms were reduced because the actual platforms used to exist right behind the main building here and exist all the way through here. Not the case anymore. Now they only have the 2 outer platforms because it's only serviced by one long distance route from Amtrak, so they repurposed the space. But beyond that, Kansas City Station is pretty cool. Honestly, kind of is the Union Station, the Washington, D.C. Union Station of the Midwest. But a really cool style, really cool look. It kind of looks a little bit bleak here, but when it's actually, you know, like active and festive, it's a really cool looking place. Let me see if I can get you all an external view. Oh yeah, there is, I forgot the name of this one. It's not a Texas Eagle, I don't think. Let me check that. One Amtrak serves. The Lincoln Service, the Missouri River Runner, and the Southwest Chief all come through Kansas City. But at different times of the day, so it's only like one train at a time. It's not a lot of them. But let me see if I can get you all the external view of the station, because it actually is really nice. And boom, there we go. That's what it looks like. So it's like a littler version of Washington, D.C. Union Station. Still a pretty neat one. And it was a major corridor of rail travel back in the day, pretty much going into the Midwest or out of the Midwest. But still, with that, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. But with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Marion Deemer, who puts in that $20 donation. And thank you very much, Marion, for that support. And thank you for keeping the people safe from the polar bears with that shoddy. But Marion said, you both rock, and it cannot wait for your new videos. And thank you very much, Marion, for the kind words once again. I'm already working on my second one. I actually enjoyed making the first one so much. I'm actually really raring to go to get going on the Greenland video that I'm making. And in fact, the video, I'll give you all the premise of it. It's discussing why the U.S. might want to actually take Greenland. Not that I'm supporting it, just the reasons why they might think they want to take it, and why it's strategically important for the U.S. security to actually be able to have a base in Greenland, and also covering the bases that are there, what it's used for, and also if a war broke out with Russia, why it would be crucial to actually be able to stage attacks from that Greenland territory. So it's going to be a very good video. I've already gotten a lot of footage for it, and also I'm writing the script right now, and also the Enforcer's working on that Panama video as well. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, I cannot wait to get the next one out. I'm working on the Panama one, and we've already got huge plans. It's going to be, and Matthew also knows, so this isn't going to be like trying to bash Matthew's video, but it's going to be visually better than Matthew's video, because we were able to make a major breakthrough and a discovery behind the scenes recently about something, and we will be able to make the quality even better than Matthew's, which was already high. So the next one will be even higher, and then Matthew's next release will probably be even better than mine. So hopefully we'll be able to get more out to y'all. And also, someone just said, I want to get this really quickly. No, Bessemer isn't that bad. Oh, buddy. Bessemer is listed as the second most dangerous place in the state of Alabama behind Anniston, and it takes a lot to beat Anniston.
Oh, that's basically, how do you say that I don't live in Alabama by not saying I don't live in Alabama?
How do you say that you're, like, let's see, hang on here. Tarrant, Alabama, that's also in Birmingham. Let's see. Birmingham is the nastiest and deadliest city in the U.S., according to r/Huntsville. It's like, damn, okay. It's like, all right. That's honestly not that far from the truth. But let's see. Birmingham has one of the highest property crime rates in Alabama. Yada, yada, yada. Birmingham, Alabama is dangerous. But Bessemer actually, see, there again, number 3, Bessemer. Number 4, Birmingham. And on a recent FBI crime stat, which I sadly cannot find here, Bessemer was actually number 1 in the country on that stat. So It is dangerous. Like, that's not an exaggeration. But beyond that, we cannot wait to get back to more videos, and maybe we'll make a video on the most dangerous place in the state of Alabama, Bessemer, as a part of a special here in the future. But still, with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next one here. This one goes to AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang, who puts in a $15 donation. Thank you very much, AMX10, for that support. They said that Russia leaked that one of their objectives was the land bridge to Crimea, and does this purposeful mention mean that the land bridge will be a non-negotiable position for Russia?
They may attempt to make it a non-negotiable position, but then we'll just bomb them into submission until it's not. But at the moment, they're probably trying to assert that all of their territorial gains must be kept if there's any attempt at even trying to move forward into the next arrangements. So the talks will fall apart mostly because of that. But with that, I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to a friend Wilkins, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, friend Wilkins, for that $10 support. It said, here, let me double last night's contribution.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for doubling last night's contribution. Y'all's support helps this channel to keep on running, and we are entirely grateful and appreciative of y'all supporting the channel and helping us to make this thing possible day in and day out. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that was a good address to that support, and a big thanks once again. And with that, we are on to the next one as Andrew grabs an Altoid. And Matthew, what do we got for the next one?
All right, so the next one here, how is that Altoid, by the way? Do you like that Altoid? Is it good?
It's good. The peppermint ones are actually, I've warmed up to them. They're actually not bad.
Yeah, those are actually better than the cinnamon ones, because I found out that the cinnamon ones have think light. Let me check. Let's see here. I have a whole like crate on my desk. Red 40. So I've been like chewing up Red 40 like a fiend because I eat Altoids like a fiend. But that's probably doing a number on me. But anyways, jumping into our next one here. Yeah, a little crazy. The peppermint ones don't have any of that junk in it. It's just literally straight up. Let's see, I got a box of those too. It's just sugar, gum arabic, natural flavor, gelatin. So not bad. This doesn't have any Red 40 in it, which is better. But jumping on to our next super chat, this one goes to Bretley Boost, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Bretley, for that support. They said, snow coffees are on me tonight, boys, and take one from the chat, and long live the LSA.
Hey, thank you so much for the coffee made of snow. And thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, where the hell would we be? We wouldn't be here, that's for sure. And so with that, what do we got for a live chat, Matthew? What do we got? What do we got?
And the live chat question is going to go to Uncovered Cube 7, who says, what is the likelihood of Russia breaking off into separate states after this conflict?
I would say it's highly unlikely if we're talking about multiple major separate states, but as far as smaller states like Chechnya and some of the Caucasus Mountain region countries breaking away, or the Caucasus Mountain region, sorry, I get that wrong every time, that's highly likely, but I'm assuming that other areas of the Russian Federation will most likely remain intact. But with that, I thank you once again for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running, and with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
And damn, Hokey Redneck just threw in another $50 support. Another big one. Big thanks, Hokey Redneck, for that support. He said, show the Aniston Monument area.
And let's see if we can get it. So here's Aniston. And let's see. Are you talking about the Freedom Riders National Monument? Because I have been through Aniston enough to know to avoid it. But I've never been through Aniston enough to actually look around, if you know what I mean. So let us take a look. Let us drop down here. Holy moly, this actually looks worse than Bessemer. No wonder it's the most violent place in the the state of Alabama. But where is the Freedom Riders Monument? Is it down here? Oh, wait, oh, there's the bus on the side of the wall. Then they have a little bit talking about it, and then they also have a little placard up here. So not really a lot about it, honestly. A little bit weird, but, well, oh, look.
He said, no, the camp.
The Aniston Monument, the camp. Let's see.
How about the military base?
Oh, the Aniston Army Depot over here? Yeah. This is the Aniston Army Depot. So I hope
that's where that atrocity happened with the chemicals.
No, I think this is where someone stole like 2 machine guns out of the arsenal, and then it became like a huge deal, and they found the guy and they tried him. Like, I think that happened like 2 or 3 years ago. No, I don't think it's that other place that you're talking about.
Let's see. It says here at the Aniston Army Depot, Alabama. The U.S. Army safely stored approximately 7% of the nation's original chemical weapons at the Aniston Army Depot. The stockpile contained nerve agents, GB, and VX, and blister agents, HD and HT. Let's see here. Aniston begins burning chemical weapons.
Let's
see.
Is that why I feel itchy? Like it's like
Oh my God! It doesn't even have a date on it. Let's see. I don't know about that, but let's see. It says Arms Control Association says Aniston begins burning chemical weapons. I don't know when that was, but anyways, there was something that was bad with like chemical stuff going on up here in Aniston at some point. So I don't know, but that's all I know.
Man, you know something? Now that you brought it up, now you brought up the Aniston Army Depot, Hokey Redneck. I got to show y'all the U.S. Army locomotives because, believe it or not, the U.S. Army actually has its own trains. They don't use them a lot, but they're red, like they're bright red, like weird red. Like, look at that.
Let's see. Painted with VX, yeah.
Probably so. I mean, they probably burned it on. But it's really cool, man, to actually think that the Army has its own locomotives. But they only use them, like, I think, around bases like the Aniston Army Depot and stuff. They're not, like, mainline usage sort of deals.
You can tell they don't hardly get any action. They're too clean.
Dude, the Army keeps these things insanely clean. You know, they probably got a whole bunch of privates out there, you know, like with like sponges, and they're like, go wash it down, and then they wash it. Like, you know, something like that. Because they're like insanely clean, legitimately. Like, look at that. And these things are old as shit. Like, this one's like a GP, like, I would assume a 30 with a low hood. Like, this thing is probably made in like the late 60s or something, and it still looks mint. So that's actually kind of cool. What is this? I don't even know what type of a locomotive that is. It looks like, dude, this thing is horrendous though. I don't know who designed that thing. Like, my God, like, oh, and look, they have a like a 40-ton switcher. That must have been way back in the day, like back in the 50s or something.
Also, by the way, if you ever want to make a video about army trains and stuff like that, DVids has like a ton of like videos of like these army trains moving around from like the beginning of like the army till now. So you could like make a nice video with that.
Man, honestly, like, did you see that today? Or like, looking
scroll
around?
up, scroll up. I'll show you. Scroll up to the top of this page. See that DVids right there in the middle? It says, no, it's like in the middle of the page. It says
right
DVids
here.
right there. Yeah, that's actually from the DVids site. You can actually see a lot of videos of those trains moving around.
Oh, dang. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Man, maybe we can make an entire thing about the U.S. Army Locomotive Corps. Like, that'd be kind of interesting. Like, maybe.
That
I
would
don't
be
know.
cool.
Maybe to some. Like, but yeah, it's still an interesting kind of a thing. You know, the Army has trains. Kind of cool. Like, but it's not a big thing anymore. Like, you know what? U.S. Army, wait, hang on. Let's see. U.S. Army Rail Transportation. Dang it. They don't have a specific page for it. Whatever. Anyways, we got to keep going because we're getting a little bit long-winded here. But I hope that was what you were looking for, Hokey Redneck. And I got to thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Lazarus7049, who puts in a 10. Thank you very much, Lazarus, for the support. So China needs water from Siberia. Might do a long-term lease.
Maybe so. I wouldn't say that that's out of the question, especially with Lake Baikal being so full of fresh, natural water. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that is addressed incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
The next one goes to Kristen Christofferson, who puts in a 10 as well. And thank you very much, Kristen, as well for the support. They said, I appreciate the accurate info, guys.
And thank you so much for enjoying the accurate info, and thank you for supporting it, so that way we can continue to put out that accurate info. And so a big thank you so much to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Jack Ragnarsson, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Jack, for the support. He said, I have a solution on the Greenland issue. Create our version of the EU, the North American Union, and turn the U.S., Canada, and Greenland into an economic alliance and create a common currency. Oh, no common currency. I'm not like pooping on the idea like that you had, by the way. Like, it's a fair idea, but common currency, I'm not for common currency, me personally. But Enforcer, what say you?
I like the U.S. dollar, but I do thank you for the support and coming up with the idea. But still, we get the benefits out of Greenland without doing that anyway. So what's the point? It's not like Greenland makes any money. I mean, like, has anyone seen the Greenland GDP lately?
What is it?
It's $3 billion.
From what, really?
I don't even know. Why is Greenland's GDP exports of shrimp and fish? So it's just shrimp and fish. That's it.
Interesting. Shrimp and fish. They're exporting a damn lot of shrimp and fish.
Man, they said unlimited shrimp and fish, and it was so. But beyond that, I hope that does address that well. I don't really see the point. Bless me, sorry.
Oh,
Goodness gracious. And they only have 56,000 people living there. I mean, that's like a small town in Alabama. But with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a 5 and says, LSA, hit the like button. That's an order. Jaga, jaga. Take one from the chat.
And thank you so much for support. Jaga, jaga, Igor. And we will take one from the chat. So what do we got?
So this one from the chat is going to go to Slothis, who says, do you guys predict the war ending anytime this year, or do you believe that it'll continue past 2025? Slothis, I would say on my side, I think it's going to last personally at least through this year. It could end by the end of the year, but it could easily go into 2026. I don't think it's going to end in a month. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would agree entirely with Matthew. I think that timetable is a pretty accurate one, in my opinion, as well. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
The next one goes to Christopher Simmons, who puts in a 5 and says, what are your thoughts about Gazprom using its private military to do a coup if Putin doesn't help keep their business running?
Oh, that would be suicidal for that company. They would end up like Wagner, desecrated and shredded, like pretty much. Like that's what would happen to them. But with that, I hope that doesn't
private jets crashing and smashing, burning, putting up statues and stuff like that outside the business front of the heroes past. Yeah, kind of like that.
Soigu at none professionally, but still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that this addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
The next one goes to Cachulian343, who puts in a 5 and says, Ukraine was the one attacked, and it's their freedom on the line. Peace and its terms are theirs to decide, and not some other person, alliance, or nation. I agree 100%. The only catch is, though, they got to be careful, because since they rely on foreign support, they kind of do have to answer to foreign nations before they actually decide what they're going to do. But ultimately, though, it is their peace on the line. But they could lose support, though, if they aren't careful. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say the same thing as Matthew. Once again, they are getting support from the United States of America significantly to the point that they say they can no longer continue the war without American support. So the United States gets a major say at that point because we're a huge financial backer. But I do agree that the terms to a peace have to be agreeable to Ukraine. Otherwise, this is not a good peace arrangement. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for your support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
The next one goes to Octavian Timarasunu, who puts in a 5 and says, I should have gone out tonight, but honestly, who wants to go club hopping? Well, I'm going to just hang out here with the LSA. The girls can wait, LSA. Octavian, I got a better idea for you. Take the girls home, make them watch the channel. There you go. That's the way to do it. But thank you very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you so much for the support, Octavian Timarasanu. And who needs to go clubbing? I mean, really, like, clubbing is just, like, it's terrible. Have y'all ever seen those people up there in the Faroe Islands go clubbing? They club baby seals, for God's sake. I mean, it's a terrible thing.
Oh.
But beyond that, I do have to say thank you so much for the support, and it's great to have you here tonight, Octavian, and I hope you've been enjoying it a great deal. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that addressed that incredibly well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Dan the Doozy, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Dan, for the support. He said, what is the likelihood of a Russian attack on NATO in the event that their economy collapses?
I would say maybe fairly likely, but I still think I would generally lean towards the side of probably not. But with that, I thank you once again for support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
The next one goes to Gachulian343 once again, who puts in a 5 and says, when I look at Russian weapons, I feel like they looked at U.S. ones and said, oh, those are good, but not Russian enough, so we'll make it worse. Those are Ruski.
Kind of that's what they did with everything. I mean, that's honestly like true for like half of their stuff. And so with that, I think you got it dead on the nail. And I got to thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so with that, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one here goes to Russia Nosi, who puts in a 5 and says, hi, Malaysian, traveling in Panama now. I'm going to the Panama Canal tomorrow. And I asked my tour guide today about China and Panama, and he said they don't like China. Man, I'll tell you what, that tour guy might be a paid actor or something like that. I don't know. But seriously speaking, though, technically, I don't think there's a direct China link. But a Hong Kong company, though, controlling the entrances, I mean, it looks like a little bit of a link to me. Sneaky one. But Enforcer, what say you?
We will have to confide in the city of knowledge for these answers. But nevertheless, I will say...
There's the embassy. What's the embassy look like? The embassy of the USA?
The embassy of the United States. Dang.
Real government. Yeah, real government like.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie, man. That thing looks like a command bunker up there on that hill. It's like we're already prepped for an invasion of this place nearly. Like you could use that as a command center. But nevertheless, I would say that like, yeah, that guy's got a little bit of a point, like maybe the folks don't like the Chinese, but the government seems to be kind of cozying up to him. So there's kind of a thing there. Also, by the way, forgot to mention, folks, that they actually have a railroad in this country. It's called the Panama Canal Railway, and it was originally run and managed by the United States, and you can tell because everything they use is American. That is an FP40, if I'm correct. And also, they just have so much stuff. I also don't like their paint scheme. I think it's honestly kind of tacky. And it was made by the United States, so I'm kind of dissing on America there. But I just think it was kind of a lame paint scheme. But still, the railway is pretty neat.
Yeah, I find it pretty neat. They have a episode on Smithsonian about this railway, so I've seen it in operation. They made it real dramatic. They were really like behind the schedule.
The Panama Canal Railway is one of the coolest in the world. It's almost like it's like the United 24 guy nearly. But anyways, oh look, they have signs in every language as well. They have it in Japanese, Chinese, Chinese.
Oh, whoa.
I think your tour guide might have been trying to not tell you something. but beyond that, anyways, I hope you all enjoyed knowing that there is a railway in Panama, because y'all know, me being me, kind of stupid as I am, I will sniff out the railways. And so with that, I hope that does address that quite well. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Tommy 2 Turnt, who puts in a 5. He said, although I don't always agree with the methodology, hey, come on, man. He said, I love what you guys do, and please keep it going.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Tommy 2 Turnt, and you turned. And so thank you once again. And hey, I thank you for appreciating it. I mean, we can't agree on everything, but I do thank you for enjoying this channel and what we do and what we bring to the table. And we bring things to the table. And so with that, thank you once again. We are on to the next one.
Feels like Thanksgiving. But anyways, moving on here to our next one. This one goes to Blazant, who puts in a 3, as well as Marc-Andre Burnett, who put in a 2, and Michael Thomas, who put in a 2 as well. And thank you, Blazant, Mark, and Michael, for that $2 and $3 support, and we appreciate it very much. And we also have a $2 support from Uncovered Cube 7, who says, always watching, and LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for always watching, and thank you for the support, and help with this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that this addressed that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one here goes to Gunfox, who puts in a 2 once again, and says that the city of Reading, Pennsylvania, Pagoda, yes, it has a food place.
And the city of Reading, Pennsylvania? You mean like the Reading Railroad, which I will not make a rabbit hole on because I know we're really pressed for time, but I'm really dying to make a rabbit hole about the Reading Railroad because it's actually on the Monopoly board because it actually had a monopoly on the coal industry.
Don't do it, man. We have to get live chats.
I know, man. I know. I get a hold back. But where is the Reading Pagoda? Where is the Reading Pagoda? Where is that pagoda? Let me just type it in. The Reading.
There it is up there on the right. It's right there on the right.
Oh.
And in the green forest.
Asian-inspired landmark atop Mount Penn. Oh, look at that.
Oh, it has a food place.
Dude. That is
whoa,
so
wait,
cool.
Whoa. Go back up to that picture for a second. You see those motorcycles?
Whoa.
Whoa. Oh, my God. They got an S1000 up there in the front. That's a nice bike. Also, they got Ducatis. Man, they got every nice bike out here. Look at this. What's going on? They got an FZ07, FZ09. Damn, man, they got some nice bikes out here.
Man, they do. And they get that nice,
the pagoda.
Man, they got that pagoda back there. They got that pagoda. Oh, look at this. Is this the inside of the building? It is. I'm not gonna lie, man. This looks like a freaking, like, railroad, like, control station. Not really a pagoda. Like, like... Maybe the railroad built this thing. I don't know. But what restaurant is in here? I don't see like a listing for a restaurant, but I would be interested to know which one is there. And also, here's the peace rock. That's a rock of peace. See? It's got a giant peace symbol on it. Also, that guy's climbing it.
That guy's going to turn it violent.
Man, we got a full view of ass right there in that picture, just looking straight up at him. It's like, dang, okay. But anyways, interesting place, and I thank you for sharing that pagoda. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And before I rabbit hole, we are on to the next one. Thank you once again, though.
And moving on here from our super chats, we refresh out. Once again, huge shout out to everybody that support the channel once again tonight and helping to keep us running, the coffee brewing, and the lights on, and also the editors editing. We appreciate that very much. We are now jumping into our live chats of the night, and of course, we have our Morse code decoders first. Tonight, it was Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J. Paul Schultz, David Millsap, Roy Fluffiness, Arabelle Garbo, and Joni Dog. They said the Morse code for today says, Gazprom is begging for the prices to increase, but soon the prices will fall. LLT, LSA, and I hope you're all right. It's cold.
And that's the sound of money. And y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I got to congratulate y'all on getting that right for the 1,066th day in a row. And I got to say that that's really impressive right there. Really impressive, as a matter of fact, that y'all have gotten that correct again. And yes, we are all right. It is incredibly cold, shivering our timbers. It's 24 degrees here right now. But nevertheless, we are doing just fine. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And crazily enough, y'all thought we were about to get to the live chats. Psych! We got one more super chat to cover, and then we'll be getting to as many live chats, hopefully, as we can, which probably will be 3, unfortunately. But with that, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so our last super chat is going to go to none other than Danny B, the channel legend, who's the chef Danny B, of course. He says, "Good evening, enforcers. I just got here. I almost missed the stream." And Danny made it. I'm glad you made it, Danny, because it's actually very late on the stream. We're almost about to go marathon length. But thank you very much, Danny, for that support, and we appreciate it. And enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you so much for the support as well, Danny B, and welcome here. You're very late. We're about to get to the live chats and round up the stream here probably in a few minutes. But we thank you for being here because it's better late than never. That's what we always say. And I thank you so much once again for being here with us tonight and supporting this channel, Danny B, because folks like you helped to make this entire show possible about the 3.5 hours that we've done right before this. And so with that, huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, it is now time for us to move on into the live chats. Due to our limited time, because we are going overtime at this point, we'll only be able to gather 3 live chats, and then we're going to be rounding out the stream. And so with that, we are into the third to last question of the night.
And also, I saw Adam Glegg saying in the live chat, a Hayabusa twin turbo. I assure you, I did not see that in that photo back there. By the way, that sounds like a death trap. Like a Hayabusas are not my type of motorcycle. I do not like them. I don't like the design. And also, putting a twin turbo on a Hayabusa, God, that's just crazy. By the way, I don't know how many horsepower that would be, but that would be freaking wild to ride that.
Dude, this thing literally looks like an execution pod. No joke. Like I would not get on that thing.
Yeah, I don't really care for it. I think, yeah, it's a Suzuki Hayabusa. This thing honestly sucks. I don't know what the idea behind it was, like a dragster bike or something like that. Look at it. Oh, this is a turbocharged one right here. 650 horsepower. That's a death trap. Like, that is a death trap right there. Like a 200 horsepower bike, I can tell you just from riding one, is insane already. 650 horsepower on a motorcycle. I don't know what the horsepower to weight ratio is on that, but that's too much right there. I don't even know who would want to ride that. You'd get killed riding that.
Dude, literally a death pod. Like, I would never ride that thing. Like, that's actually incredibly scary to think that thing has 650 horsepower. But with that, before we get on to the third to last question of the night, we did actually see that another super chat came in from another channel legend. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and this one goes to Walter A. Lakota Jr., who put in the 10, and thank you very much, Walter, for that support as well. He said, Aloha, the Enforcer Matt, and LSA from OG Ellison Bosun. Check out the Temple Valley, Oahu. That temple is an exact copy of the temple in Osaka, Japan.
Temple Valley in Oahu. Let's go check it out. Temple Valley. Let's see here. Isn't that it? That can't be it. That doesn't look like it. Let's see here. Is this it? That can't be it. That doesn't look like it. Let's see. Is it though? Let me just check the pictures. Oh, there we go. Wow, that is really cool looking, actually. That's incredibly cool.
Yeah, I like the place where it's at. That's a nice looking place.
Man, really picturesque, I would have to say. Man, it honestly makes me kind of want to travel to Hawaii. But beyond that, really cool to hear that this is the one in Osaka. Osaka is actually a pretty cool city. One day, hopefully, I'll be able to go there and see it myself. But nevertheless, thank you for sharing with us, Walter A. Lakota, and showing us this beautiful replica of a Japanese temple in the middle of Hawaii, which is just incredibly interesting and fascinating, really all around. Where is this thing on the map, though? It's not that building. It just cannot be that building. Where in the world is it, then? Because it's somewhere around here. What in oh, here it is? That's it. Okay, so now we know where it is. So it was over there. And it's literally backed up to a neighborhood. What does this neighborhood look like? Actually, pretty nice.
Not bad. Not bad at all, actually.
Yeah, not bad at all. It's like a normal American suburb. And also, it was surrounded by mountains. Do you see that? Like, man, look at that.
That's nice. I like that. That's real nice. Looks like this honestly looks like a place where like a volcano would like erupt and like the lava would come down the side of the mountain or something like that. It looks similar.
It's not that far from it. I mean, like, they're just a couple of islands over from the big one. You know, like the volcano right over here, Mauna Loa.
Mauna Loa. I would like to live up there next to Mauna Loa.
I like to live here, my low, my. And you can also see all the last pyroclastic flow right there where it's like charred and black. That's where the last flow was.
A little pyroclastic flow. You mean a little bit of lava?
Yeah, a little bit of lava, and then it goes all the way to the ocean down here. Damn, son. But anyways,
pollution.
Man, I think we need to put some environmental regulations, EPA level 5 on that thing.
Man, put a fine on it.
Yeah, man, smack a fine on it. But anyways, with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Earl Snyder, who says, do you think we will see any new exciting Western tech being sent to Ukraine in 2025?
I have a feeling probably not. I know that the president said they were going to send the latest and the greatest, the best that anyone had ever seen. Everyone's going to look at it and go, wow, that's the greatest weapon system ever conceived. That would be a national security risk. So it will probably be the same kind of stuff that we've sent in the past, but more of it, possibly, if the peace talks fall apart. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And it's Tom Exman. He said, what is the ruble to dollar ratio today? Can we see that translation?
Let's see. Ruble to dollar. Oh?
I'll do it the other way around, I think he meant to say. USD to ruble.
Oh, look at that. They've been cooking them books hard. They got it down to 97.7.
How's that even possible, considering that they're literally about to collapse? It's like, what is this, like the moment of like recovery for a second before it completely goes down?
Dude, this is the last great cook. And right now, the head of the Russian central bank is going, anyone can cook, as like the steam pressure in the valves is like reaching the exploding point. Like that's the current ruble conversion, though, just in case you're wanting to know. I'm kind of shocked by that because you can see that they are cooking the books tremendous like right here. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best we can, and we are on to the final question of the night. And so who was the lucky last person through in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is going to be AJ GXSR, who I think that's actually a Suzuki. But thank you very much, AJ, for that support. He said, just got here, and is it true that Putin says he will stop hostilities in Ukraine if the West stops providing weapons?
No, that's not true. He's lying about that. If we stop providing weapons, he wouldn't follow through on that a single minute. So that's what I generally say. Also, he would make some sort of a stipulation where you have to stop providing weapons. We have to see clear proof for a month. And until then, we're just going to keep fighting. And then after a month passes, we don't really think they're telling the truth. It would be something like that. He's not being honest about that. At least that's what we know. Putin lies about everything. That's generally what we always need to understand. But with that, it is time for us to round out tonight's stream. And I gotta say, a big wahoo. A wahoo, as a matter of fact, to everyone who was watching tonight. We had 10.2 thousand people here at the peak, and 62,000 people actually, have watched this stream before it ended. We are entirely honored and appreciative of having each and every single one of y'all here and enjoying this channel. And if y'all have enjoyed it greatly, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We've actually gotten up to a whopping, as a matter of fact, 336,930 subscribers. We're very close to 337,000 at this point, and we hope that y'all will join us to be the 337,000th subscriber. And so with that, we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, we will be seeing you all tomorrow on the Short War video midday. Tomorrow, I believe, is my Short War video day, so if there is enough news to cover, you'll be hearing from me as well. And once again, huge thanks for another great stream tonight, and be sure to join us again tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next night of War News streams, because it's getting crazy every day these days, so there's a lot of news to cover. But with that, of course, Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava, get some rest, and good night.
Folks